Underdog Central. Now let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabos. Wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
Hold your applause, I insist. The best thing you've ever heard has commenced. I can't stop, I won't stop, I persist. And if a canvas is blank, I will invent. An artiste, but I never withdrew. I keep my feet planted, baby, I am Groot. It's Underdog Central, it don't get no better. Rock the Smoothie King Center, that's with no hit record. Now you know I'm not playing. I started surveying, I'm about to buffet it and leave the rest decaying. An independent nigga, though I'm feeling like I major. Touchdown in your city and they treat me like the mayor. No room for squares opposite of John Mayer. It's going down, the crowd louder than Craig Sager. It's all in my makeup, you niggas better wake up. Not a Fat Boys break up, what?
Now let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabos. Wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
Now every time that I come around, your best advice is to hunker down. Any loud TVs, you better turn them down. Like your grandma when a storm coming, but it's just your boy coming. And I ain't here to play, I'm trying to destroy something. I'm giving niggas work, I'm trying to employ something. From a city called New Orleans, you know we enjoy stunting. Ladies Jones for my junior, I guess I'm a Roy something. But enough about me, let's talk about you. But you ain't even did enough to talk about. And that there's sad, call that blue. I'm the best below the heavens, call that blue. Fast as a Jaguar, that's Maurice Jones true. I'm about to take your bishop, you have no juice. Hanging on for dear life off the side of a roof. And that's a damn shame, but part of the campaign.
Now let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabos. Wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
What is there left to do? Yo, I'd rather you trust me than to love me. That's cause love can grow from trust me. But giving out love, I'm hella rusty. I'm super guarded, preparing for superstardom, baby. I'm well on my way, I get more love every day. We wilder than Dante, they call him a heavyweight. I burn shit, burn quits, I make opposition skate. I earn this, so I'm the only one that's eating off this plate. You ain't help me get it, you won't help me with it. Ain't see you when I started, don't pull up when we finish. It's Underdog Central, forever what we on. It's like an ear canal, I keep my circle small. Dig? I ain't worried about you haters, I'm like, they won't ever catch me slipping, ain't no laid back with my feet up, I'm like, let's go. I ain't worried about you haters, I'm like, they won't ever catch me slipping, ain't no laid back with my feet up, I'm like, let's go. Catching flights, taking trips, I'm almost never home. Chasing checks and stacking chips, they know what we on. I be murdering them stages that they put me on. I ain't even gotta the job like I'm Tommy Strong. Don't ever diss, I'm taking shots and it's Tommy Strong. No hill figure, it's too much to deal with him. Life's a movie, gotta focus on it, so I Will Smith them. Putting numbers on the board, my team is so offensive. What's up? I ain't worried about you haters, I'm like, they won't ever catch me slipping, ain't no. Laid back with my feet up, I'm like, let's go. I ain't worried about you haters, I'm like, they won't ever catch me slipping, ain't no. Laid back with my feet up, I'm like, let's go. Nowadays I see things more clearer. Stressful days as success gets nearer. Sounded sweet, but to me gets bitter. Momentarily things gets better, but then it changes to such displeasure. I want to shine from all my endeavors. If you want diamonds though, gotta have pressure. That's just part of the path, that is the catch. Then I will be Chris Carter with the catch. I tread through the moss like Audubon Park, so everything is all from the heart. Yeah, I need the beat and to know what they all seem to need from me. The best version of I's what I need to be, and to do it A, B, C, D easily.
We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now.
Here and now, this close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. Here and now, listen close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. AKA a heavyweight, and sometimes hard to handle like Chevy Chase. Anybody looking down, I set them straight, cause all I make is dope, but I ain't selling weight. I got no choice, is what I have to do. Every line I write is masterful. They hands up and down like latitude, and that's every night, plus my attitude. But even still, if I'm feeling doubt, I just take a moment to figure out what got me here, and stick to that. My presence is a gift of rap. I mean my gift is rap. My gift is raps like presents. Let's kick the facts, and for the ones that's gone, we can't get them back, so we take time to put them in the track. Go.
We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now.
Here and now, listen close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. Here and now, listen close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. Here and now. Here and now. Yeah. It's all for you. It's all for you. Been rocking for a minute, I think it's time to say it. Ain't scared of no commitment, you know that I ain't playing. And these feelings kinda different, ain't nothing that could change it. We only get one life, and life is what you make it. So how about you come over to the crib, sit down next to candlelight, eat your favorite dish.
What's going on, everybody?
Your favorite song, and put on your favorite outfit.
A few minutes away. I just want to jump in and say thank you guys for being on the stream today. But as you see right here, we're going to have the criminal justice meeting. Today is New Orleans City Council. So yeah, we're just going to let this keep bumping. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes or so. Yeah. So if you got to go grab you some coffee, go to the bathroom, get you some water, some popcorn, or whatever it is, man, we'll be back. Oh, okay, so you've been from the jump, yeah. So Sherry, yeah, it was Glow for sure. Yeah, no, that's the let's start show. Yeah, that's Glow.
You know what it is
when I turn
them lights down. Girl, I want you here and I want you right now.
I'm gonna play with some stuff in the background, y'all will see it, but whatever.
We can do it right here, right now. You know what it is when I turn them lights down. Girl, I want you here and I want you right now. Going all night now. See that sparkle in your eye? You know what's up, the best out, you know what's us. I hold you down, I know you trust. I love everything about you, baby. It's more than lust, but best believe when I get my hug, I'm gonna grab your butt. To let them know that you mine. You all over my mind. You the bomb like a mine. Got faults, I don't mind. Cause I got those too. I accept them all like I'm supposed to. The only one on the planet that I am this close to. No frontin', there is nothing that I just won't do to make you smile and get used to that, cause I'm gonna be here a while. Yeah, you know my style. It's forever. Yeah. It's forever. Yeah. We can do it right here, right now. You know what it is when I turn them lights down. Girl, I want you here and I want you right now. Going all night now. We can do it right here, right now. You know what it is when I turn them lights down. Girl, I want you here and I want you right now. Going all night now.
Let's both do that. What do you think? Both of us? Yeah. Okay.
Watch me go off, I'm so throwed off, watch me go off, I'ma show off, Watch me go off, I'm so throwed off, watch me go off, I'm so throwed off, watch me go off, I'm I'ma show off, Watch me go off, I'm so throwed off, watch me go off. Shine so bright, glow off. Undefeated, no loss. Bro, we about to go off. Yeah, high key. You should know where I be. NOLA, my ID. My city behind me. Got the juice, high C. Ain't nobody like me, so everybody like me. These sneakers hella pricey. These came out at 04. No, don't copy my mojo. Get beat like Mojo Jojo. Got polo on my logo. My gang, they hella loco. They'll catch you for the Lolo. And I won't say it no more. No. Watch me go, I'ma show. Watch me throw up, I'ma go. Watch me go, I'ma show. I'ma throw up, I've been all over, but I come back. Arm and hammer, you can't touch that. She got good. I'm gon' run back, and I won't pull out. No, I won't pull out. I got green like Draymond. I get ghost seance. All my cars are paid off. This about to pay off. I made off like Madoff. I ain't never laid off. Fuck what they say though. You know I don't play though. I'm a dog, I'm so let me go, I'm a dog from a show. Watch me go, I'm so throw off, watch me go, I'm so throw off, watch me go, I'm so from a show, watch me go, from a throw off, watch me go.
Looks like we are still, we're about 10 minutes away, according to the, according to the, what is the website, City Council website. Okay.
Just look at the,
minutes or so. I'm trying to get the camera turned on here.
Shit, I don't even know anymore. I'm just going off instinct. Sometimes my spirit is stirred like a mixture. Sometimes my ego and heart aren't in sync. Most times I don't even know what to think. Got a lot of issues, I never know what to do with. Even in the moments I be winning, I be losing. Every single day I'm trying to get it, I be moving. But then I get lost inside my head and I lose this shit. I get mad as fuck, nigga, it's in my genes. Or I get sad as fuck, nigga, no in between. But when I come back to, I see the silver lining. Though I got mad faults, at least I'm really trying. And if this is who I am, at least I recognize it. It's forever a problem, a battle of private. But if that's the point, here's something beside it. When it comes to this rap shit, I think I'm the nicest. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the, just look at the, just look at the
right side. I'm kinda dope. Cause musically I take you right where you trying to go. You, I'm trying to heal, and y'all trying to smoke. And if you ain't on what I'm on, you got to go. I'm the son of a city that still needs me to hate on. I write dissertations and they write in the crayons. I need mental health and some titties to lay on. I'm killing this shit, Banks, let's have a say on. I just want everybody to put their hands up. But this depression got me feeling like, man, fuck. I'm trying to be what my ancestors dreamed of. So when they tell you the greatest coming, they mean us. It's Underdog Central, and we getting healthy, we getting happy, we getting wealthy. And I will never let this moment never go to waste. Cause my future is brighter than Stephen Curry's face. Just look at the bright side. Splash. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the bright side. Just look at the, just look at the, just look at the. Nowadays I see things more clearer. Stressful days as success gets nearer. Sounded sweet, but to me gets bitter. Momentarily things gets better, but then it changes to such displeasure. I want to shine from all my endeavors. If you want diamonds though, gotta have pressure. That's just part of the path, that is the catch. Then I will be Chris Carter with the catch. I tread through the moss like Audubon Park, so everything is all from the heart. Yeah, I need the beat and to know what they all seem to need from me. The best version of I's what I need to be, and to do it A, B, C, D easily.
We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now.
Here and now, this close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. Here and now, this close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt. Yeah. AKA a heavyweight, and sometimes hard to handle like Chevy Chase. Anybody looking down, I set them straight, cause all I make is dope, but I ain't selling weight. I got no choice, is what I have to do. Every line I write is masterful. They hands up and down like latitude, and that's every night, plus my attitude. But even still, if I'm feeling doubt, I just take a moment to figure out what got me here, and stick to that. My presence is a gift of rap. I mean my gift is rap, I mean my gift is wrapped like presents. Let's kick the facts, and for the ones that's gone, we can't get them back, so we take time to put them in the track. Go.
We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now. We in the here and now.
Here and now, let's close and hear it out. down, yeah, yeah. Hear it now, listen close and hear it out. One life, so live it out. Work through the fear and doubt, yeah, yeah. Hear it now. Hear it now.
Put me on. I be sipping on it, sipping on it. I be smoking on it, smoking on it. I be sipping on it, sipping on it. I be smoking on it, smoking on it. I be sipping on it, sipping on it. I be smoking on it, smoking on it. I be sipping on it, sipping on it. I be smoking on it, smoking on it. Feeling like I washed my Levi's too many times. I'm faded, yeah, great I despise. Put it out, no hair.
Yeah. Underdog Central. Now let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabots, wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
Hold your applause, I insist. The best thing you've ever heard has
There you go,
commenced.
Sherry.
I can't
There we
stop,
go. We
I
back.
won't
We
stop,
plug it
I
back.
persist.
Back
And
off
if
the
a
top.
canvas is
We
blank,
going
I
back.
will invent an artiste, but I never withdrew. I keep my feet planted, baby, I am Groot. It's Underdog Central, it don't get no better. Rock the Smoothie King Center, that's with no hit record. Now you know I'm not playing. I started surveying, I'm about to buffet it and leave the rest decaying. An independent nigga, though I'm feeling like I major. Touchdown in your city and they treat me like the mayor. No room for squares, opposite of John Mayer. It's going down, the crowd louder than Craig Sager. It's all in my makeup, you niggas better wake up. Not a fat boys break up, what?
Now let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabots, wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
Now every time that I come around, your best advice is to hunker down. Any loud TVs, you better turn them down. Like your grandma when a storm coming, but it's just your boy coming. And I ain't here to play, I'm trying to destroy something. I'm giving niggas work, I'm trying to employ something. From a city called New Orleans, you know we enjoy stunting. Ladies Jones for my junior, I guess I'm a Roy something. But enough about me, let's talk about you. But you ain't even did enough to talk about. Ooh, and that there sad, call that blue. I'm the best below the heavens, call that blue. Fast as a Jaguar, that's Maurice Jones-Drew. I'm about to take your bishop, you have no shoes, hanging on for dear life off the side of a roof. And that's a damn shame, but part of the
Now
campaign.
let's start the show. Purple, green, and gold. I came out that N-O-O to the top of the globe. We watched it all grow. From white tees and jabots, wherever you from though, where you about to go, let's all watch the show.
What is there left to do? Yo, I'd rather you trust me than to love me. That's cause love can grow from trust me. But giving out love, I'm hella rusty. I'm super guarded, preparing for superstardom, baby. I'm well on my way. I can roll up every day. Wilder than Dante. They call him a heavyweight.
Started, man. Turn this camera on, man. You want to see, man? Don't be out here blocking the people.
So I'm the only one that's eating
Come on, man. Turn the camera on,
man. Help
man.
me get it. You won't help me with it. Ain't see you when I started. Don't pull up when we finish. It's Underdog Central. Forever what we on. It's like an ear canal. I keep my circle small. Dig?
Well, shout out to all two of y'all who are in there right now. I like y'all. Appreciate y'all. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Lay back with my feet up.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from the April 12th, 2022 meeting. Moved by Councilman Moreno, second by Councilmember Harris. All in favor? Yea, ayes have it, no nays. The minutes are approved. Approval of the May 10th, 2022 minutes. Moved by Councilmember Moreno, second by Councilmember Harris. All in favor? Ayes have it, so ordered. And now we get into update, Mr. Harang, updates from the various criminal justices. Next item on the agenda.
So, unlike a regular city council meeting, one thing you're not gonna see everybody here. So it looks like we have Councilmember Leslie Harris, we have Councilmember President Moreno, Councilmember Eugene Green, and Councilmember Oliver Thomas. And so this
I want to
is
thank all of our criminal justice partners as well as the community for being here too. Probably the most important issue facing our city right now.
That's right. The next agenda item is the update from various members of the criminal justice system, from Orleans, the Orleans Parish Criminal Court Judge Robin Pittman and Judge Tracey Flemings Davillier, Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, Chief Shaun Ferguson, New Orleans Police Department, and Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hutson.
Guys, if you could take your position at the table, please.
Also, don't forget there is a space that you can go to on the City Council website. If you just Google New Orleans City Council, you can actually go and leave public comment.
I think we're going to start with our Chief Judge and Judge Davillier.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And guys, thank you guys for accepting. This is an opportunity not only to enter into discussions about what we're doing collectively with criminal justice, but for individually all of those components to update the council as well as the public on where we are in this fight to make us one of the safest cities in America. Judge Pittman.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for inviting us to this Criminal Justice Committee meeting. We welcome the opportunity to be here. I have to my left, well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Chief Judge of Criminal District Court, Robin D. Pittman. I have to my left, Deputy Chief Judge Tracey Flemings Davillier, and to my right, our Judicial Administrator, Robert Kasich. And so, were you guys able to get our PowerPoint? I have distributed copies to every member of the council, but I didn't know if you had it to put it up on the screen. If not, I can just move on. It's
The copy we have is sideways.
okay. Did you have this?
So
All right,
if
so-
you've never been to the council
okay,
meetings,
so when I
they
asked,
have these screens that flank
what we
the
should be
sides of the
prepared for
council, and
today,
that's what
basically,
she
I
was
was
sort of
advised
wondering
that
if
we
you
should
could
be
get
providing an update
that
on
presentation
how
that
things
she
are
had in
going
her
at
hand
Criminal
on the
District
screens.
Court since we last appeared for the special council meeting back in January of this year. And so one of the first things we talked about and what you should have in front of you and what is not able to be on the screen today is just our plans for our emergency plans for any disaster recovery. It includes our continuity of operations plan, just basically, letting you know the essential personnel listing and all the contact information with all the agencies that are a part of our COOP, and to let you know that we are in continued collaboration with the city's Homeland Security and the Louisiana Supreme Court, and just advising that a copy of this COOP should have been received by your office as well as Louisiana Supreme Court, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal, the Mayor's Criminal Justice Coordination, the NOPD, and the sheriff's office. And so, without further ado, I know that you guys want to probably get straight to court security. And so that is what is next on our PowerPoint. And so
obviously this is going to be
I guess I want to start off with,
Is your PowerPoint set up yet, Judge?
I was told that they
Sheriff Susan Hutson
couldn't get it
and court
to
security works
turn
for
the
her
correct
deputies.
way, so I guess that is what's making it unavailable to the public.
So we'll follow you on,
Yes,
Right.
sir. And so,
No,
some of
no,
what
that
I'm going to
energy
talk
grab,
about
that
is
the
not
judge,
going to
that
be on the
is
handout, but
Judge,
I just
Pittman.
wanted to, I guess,
is,
go back to
Judge
where
Pittman
we
from
were
Civil
in July.
District
I'm sorry,
Court.
in January, when
Criminal District Court, excuse
we
me,
came before the
Criminal
special
District Court.
council meeting. I had been asked,
Orleans Parish
how
Criminal
was
District
criminal
Court,
court
Section
functioning,
F, Judge,
particularly with our in-custody defendants. And I explained to the council that under the prior sheriff, we were on a staggered schedule, wherein we get to see our in-custody defendants. Some judges have the schedule of Monday, Wednesday. Some have the schedule of Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday sort of like a floating day. Whereas if a particular judge needs an in-custody defendant, we notify the sheriff's office. We were on a rotating schedule. That schedule had come to an end. So we just basically notify the sheriff if we need an in-custody defendant brought into criminal district court in person, or if we need him or her via Zoom. And so since the new sheriff took office in May of this year, that same staggered schedule has existed. We've been asked just to give her some time to work on her staffing before that staggered schedule would change. And so, as you all know, on Monday we were without OPSO's security at criminal district court, having just found out that this was going to take place on Sunday evening. For the following day, we just kind of went into emergency mode and made some phone calls to jurors that were expected to appear on Monday, because we did have jury trials scheduled along with our regular dockets that involved in-custody defendants for those judges that have access to in-custody defendants on Mondays and Wednesdays. We tried to move as quickly as we could to notify other personnel and other stakeholders because we decided that it was going to be the safest way to proceed by closing the building, but continuing with court operations virtually. And so that was pretty much how we proceeded. We had been advised that in-custody defendants would be provided to, their access would be provided to us virtually. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And so we were able to just deal with on-bond defendants on Monday. On Monday evening, we did have a meeting with the sheriff and some of her staffers to discuss a better way to proceed on Tuesday, which is what we did. And I believe we were provided with about 15 deputies, and we made decisions on where they would go to try to properly secure the building. Some judges agreed to defer to other judges who had jury trials set so that we can make the best use of the deputies that were going to be presented to us. Again, on yesterday, and that was a one-day plan. Again, on yesterday evening, we met with the sheriff and her staff to discuss how we would proceed today, Wednesday, June 15th, and hopefully for the rest of the week, which is again being provided as many deputies as she could provide us. We discussed that every section that has in-custody defendants on either Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday would get 2 deputies per section. Those that just had on-bond defendants would get 1 deputy, and there would be at least 2 deputies at 3 entrances of criminal district court. And so with today being Wednesday, I have not had the opportunity to talk to my other colleagues to see if that agreement was followed, because we were to be here at 10 a.m. So I can only tell you how things went on Monday and how things went on yesterday. But today I can't fill you in because the day isn't quite over, and I'm not sure who on my bench received security. I do know that I had one deputy in my courtroom and another one handling the in-custody defendants virtually for.
Not sure what's going on here. Looks like there's a hiccup on the live stream. Let me see if I can get that resolved for us. Give me one quick second. Let me jump back in real quick. Hold on. Let me get it back. Get it back.
Ask some questions at this time.
I don't think the PowerPoint is necessary. I think you've laid out what I think some of the more immediate issues are that we need to talk about, and we're going to start with some questions from the City Council. Councilmember Harris, then Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Chief Judge. What is the normal amount of deputies that you have prior to this incident?
On a daily basis, we have about 30 deputies inside the courthouse. The sheriff has committed to one deputy per section of court that's open, and each section of court that has a jury trial, they've committed to 2 deputies for the jury trials.
Is that, so this is the new commitment that you're getting?
Today the commitment was 18. I believe yesterday is what the sheriff agreed to, that we would have 18 bailiffs, deputies inside the courtroom today, inside the court building today.
Do you feel like 18 deputies is enough to keep you all safe and the jurors and everyone safe?
Well, just as we said to the sheriff and her other staffers yesterday evening when we met, what we would prefer is 2 deputies per section, regardless of if we have in-custody defendants or not.
And
that is how we had proceeded prior to COVID.
And how many sections do you have?
13.
13. So you would want 26 deputies?
Yes.
Just in sections
Just
alone.
in sections.
Right.
We need deputies to man all the entrances of criminal district court. There's the 2-lane entrance, and there are 2 entrances, Broad and South White.
Okay.
And additionally, we would also request security throughout the entire building. I mean, we have on a daily basis
like a lot of deputies.
200 jurors sitting in the jury lounge, up to 200 jurors sitting in the jury lounge that have no security presence on the ground level, throughout the first floor, or the grand halls. As you know, a lot of these charges that are brought to criminal court involve victims and witnesses that are also inside the hallways as well, family members of defendants. So there's a lot of activity outside the hallway that we would hope to the sheriff to have a presence in those areas as well.
And if I might add, for magistrate court, which is our evening court, and on the weekends there's no security, and this started with the previous administration during COVID, during the pandemic. We went to a virtual setting on the weekends, and so we've remained on a virtual setting mainly because of the lack of security in the courthouse on the weekends and limited security in the evenings. Those magistrate commissioners are meeting in person in the evenings, but there's still limited security. So security is a big issue, and I'm sure you've seen nationwide all of the incidents and issues. So it's a grave concern to not only us, but our staff and families as well.
And I heard you say something about there was a discussion about people appearing virtually on Monday, but it didn't happen. Is that?
Sure. When I had conferred with the sheriff on Sunday, and she advised that all of the security from Criminal District Court was going to be pulled, I inquired as to whether or not we would have access to our in-custody defendants virtually, and I was told yes. And then on Monday, I did not have access personally, and then I inquired of my colleagues, and none of us did. And in a meeting with the sheriff, I believe what we were told was there was a need to do a lockdown, and that was why we did not have any in-custody defendants appear virtually, as we had been told.
So, but you were able to have the bonded folks come, is that
virtually.
Right? Virtually.
Correct. Yeah, we did our best to try to get signage out late on Sunday or early Monday morning. I had spoken to the district attorney and the chief public defender, Derwin Button, and asked both of them to relay the information to their respective attorneys, who could then relay it to the on-bond defendants, that the building was going to be shut down, but that court operations were not going to cease, and to ask them to please join court virtually.
And were people able to do that?
Yes.
It was actually very successful.
Yes.
The district attorney and the public defender both did a good job getting their clients to log into the system.
Yes, we were pleased.
We had a good turnout.
We were pleased in that regards, but although we did our best to do a press release and put the information out, there were individuals who did not get the message and did show up for court. There were jurors who did not get the message and did show up for court. So we just had to apologize and tell them that, we would keep them posted on how court would proceed for the remainder of the week. And so just to fill you in, jurors did report on yesterday, and some did report today.
And you had civilians turn these people away, is that right? Because there's no security.
Correct. Mr. Kasich was there, one of our colleagues who's actually sitting in council chambers today. Judge Nandi Campbell also assisted, and other personnel of the Judicial Administrator's Office assisted with notifying individuals as they came that the building was closed and that they should join virtually, and even assisted them with figuring out how to join virtually.
Can you talk about just future impact if you don't have these deputies, if you don't have the 26 that you were promised, or the 30 that it sounds like you really need, 30 plus? Can you talk about the impact on trials going forward?
Well, of course it becomes difficult. Councilmember Harris, we've kind of learned how to just make do.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing during the pandemic. Of course, that is our dream list, to have 26 or have 30, but we've just learned how to make do. I think I could speak for all of my colleagues in saying that we are all very concerned for our safety and the safety of the public by not having the amount of deputies that we believe the courthouse needs to safely function. But again, knowing how important our jobs are, how important the movement of these cases are for the public, the victims, the defendants themselves, we try to make do with what we have.
Can you just provide an update, and I'm sure it's in the materials, but I haven't gone through them yet, of how many trials that you've had so far this year since we last talked in January?
Sure. So just to refer you to page 10 if you'd like. So we kind of went from May of 2021 to May of 2022, and it's approximately 30 jury trials that have been held during that period, with them ranging in days from a one-day trial to as long as a 6-day trial.
2 weeks. We've had a couple of 2 weeks.
I know I had a 2-week trial myself.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
When I spoke with the sheriff on Sunday night, I expressed to her that my concerns of her taking deputies out of criminal court was the delay of justice and also potentially an infringement on defendants' rights. Do you think that this entire situation could lead to those issues?
Could. We're hoping not. As I said, we tried to move along in an emergency basis, on an emergency basis as quickly as we could. I haven't heard any attorneys make such claims, but I think due to the fact that we were able to kind of get back on track a little bit, the next day we shouldn't have those concerns. I had expressed to the sheriff that I was concerned, this is on Sunday evening, about any judges that could have had 701 cases set for trial where individuals had filed speedy trial motions. And to my recollection, I don't believe any of my colleagues said that they had any such cases set on Monday. So I'm thankful for that.
And explain to the public what a 701 release is.
Hold on one second. Let's
So
talk about 701
basically when a defendant is held in custody and his attorney files a speedy trial motion, the state of Louisiana has a certain amount of time to try that defendant on whatever such charges are, and if he or she does not do that, that defendant could actually be released from jail without there being a bond. And so I explained the same to the sheriff on Sunday.
And so if I may add,
So
just
the-
to
and listen,
clarify,
that's a
there are
major
two
thing about
types of
701
701
back to
releases.
Jason.
One is sort of pre-filing of a
One
bail of
thing that the
information
DA
or an
always said that the
indictment.
That we
backlog
discussed
of
in
trials
June.
That
is
was
one of the
previously
reasons why
discussed.
these
And there is
701
also
holds,
provision
sort of
for speedy
expire,
trials
which is why
once
some
there is a
people
bill of
get back
information or
out
an indictment
onto the
that's been
streets
filed and
earlier
someone
than
is
a lot
pending
of-
trial.
A lot of the complaints
And while
about
we're talking
the
about
DAs
laws,
releasing people,
tell me
releasing
about
people. The 701 is one
what
of them. So
type
I
of
guess one
requirements
of the
there are
questions, one of the things
legally
that
for
they're
the
talking
sheriff
about
to
is that,
provide
like,
security
the
to the court.
idea, like, did this
Well, we
cause
had
any problems with 701 holds?
discussed
Did anybody get out?
Louisiana
I think
Revised
what it's
Statute
starting to look like is the council
135539,
is
which clearly
I don't know, it
outlines
sounds like
the
they're
duties that
trying
the
to
sheriff
prove
is
a
to,
point
is
for
to
the
provide
sheriff. That's
court
what I'm kind of
security
reading right now. It's just like,
at
yes,
criminal district
it was a
court
big
at all
deal
times.
that the sheriff
We did go over
pulled
that
the
with
deputies, but according
the
to Judge
sheriff,
Pittman, it didn't
and
seem like it
I
caused any
can't
problems,
tell
at
you
least
that
for
we had
that
heard
one
back
day.
from her
So it'll
or
be
her
very interesting to
attorney
see
in
how this continues
regards
to go
to
on.
that particular statute.
But no,
but
30
I'm sure
trials
the
is not allowed.
sheriff
There should
is
be
aware
many more
of
jury
the
trials
statute.
to answer the question.
And so it's shall, right? Not may
Shall.
provide.
Shall. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware of that as well. I had heard that on Monday that there were deputies who weren't exactly sure where they were supposed to report. Were any of the deputies in court on Monday just waiting to receive orders?
So I can say, based on my conversations with my colleagues and what I know personally, is that we did not have any deputies in our respective courtrooms. We did not have any deputies manning any entrance of criminal district court. Just as you heard, we've heard the same thing in regards to deputies being in the building at some point or another who were unsure as
Looks
to
like we're
where
about
they
to kill
should
some
be.
disinformation real quick. Holla at your
But I do
boy.
not know that firsthand. We heard the same information, Council President Moreno.
And I just have one final question. Well,
Sure.
actually, sorry, two. What about safety protocols for survivors, victims, witnesses? With lesser security, are those matters being cared for?
And so normally, those individuals are usually protected over at the district attorney's office and are usually brought to our building at some point with the staff of the district attorney's office. So they are usually on top of handling that. If there is additional access of the courthouse that's needed to house any of those individuals, they usually let us know that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
And if I could add, Judge Pittman,
Yeah.
the judges on Bonk recently took basically some additional proactive measures wherein the DA's office would normally enter through a certain entrance of the court. That entrance is not secured by any deputies or by any machinery where where the information or whatever they're bringing into court would be scanned. So we thought that it was really vital to basically prohibit anyone from entering into that area of court other than a judge or their staff, but to require all attorneys, including the district attorney's office, to enter into the entrances that were secured and that had scanners. And we understand the burden that this places on our assistant district attorneys because they're carrying over multiple files. But until we can ensure the safety of victims, of witnesses, etc., we felt that it was vital, especially given everything that's going on around the country, that we institute this particular measure for now until we could do something more permanent.
All right, this really is my final question. So, moving forward, so what's happening now? I mean, do you all have some type of working group with the sheriff to figure out, next steps? Are there calls planned, several times a day? Like, what is kind of the organizational structure as to developing, a plan where everyone has a seat at the table so that everyone's input is heard?
And so, as I mentioned, we We met on Monday evening. We met on Tuesday evening. Any of the judges of criminal district court who wanted to participate in the conversation were invited to do so. The district attorney was invited. The public defender was invited. The sheriff had several of her staffers there. I'm trying to think of everyone. Criminal Justice Commissioner Tanisha Stevens was invited, and so yesterday, as Mr. Kasich mentioned earlier, we were advised that we would at least get about 18 deputies to man the courthouse for today and hopefully for the rest of the week. We plan to discuss further with the sheriff how we proceed for next week if that number of 18 has to go lower.
Mm-hmm. I guess what I was looking for was that, what are the like plan A, plan B, plan C? Like, I mean, I think that kind of needs to be what is determined. Should there be a staffing emergency, this happens. This is the notification. Like very specific, so that everyone's on the same page of what could happen next. But what I'm hearing is that you're not, or at least the sheriff is not at that point.
Correct.
Okay.
She's been non-committal at this point. She is trying to resolve it. We're trying to give her a minute to figure it out on her end, but obviously we have to consider public safety at the criminal court building as well. So just as she's addressing public safety in her building, the inmate safety, we have to address public safety in our building, and we do have concerns that we've shared with her. So we've met twice with her, and I'm assuming we're going to have more meetings in the future. I assume we'll have another one this afternoon after this meeting to see what happens here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kasich. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Green, and then Councilmember Morrell, you have questions?
Thank you all for coming before us today.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good questions have been answered that are based on the questions that were asked.
Well.
At approximately what time on Sunday evening did you all determine that there would not be deputies for the next day?
Well, I received a call at about 2 minutes after 5 p.m. on Sunday. I had missed the call, so I called back in 20 minutes later. So I was on the phone with the sheriff at about 5:22 on Sunday evening. And I was being advised that she was going to have to pull security from criminal district court. I, at that time, indicated that I, of course, couldn't agree to that. I offered some alternatives. I offered if we could possibly get a grace period because of the time of evening it was, knowing that we were expecting jurors to be in the building. Cases had already been set.
We got a grace period.
To me that
Sheriff was like, "Nah, fam,
it
we
was
out."
a crisis, and I couldn't get the grace period, and the alternatives could not be accommodated at the time.
So from 5:20 p.m. on Sunday until the time when jurors, victims, and witnesses were going to be coming into the courthouse, what measures were taken to contact all of the jurors, all of the victims, and all of the witnesses who were going to be coming into a building that had no security? And I don't accept it if it said that they were turned away at the door, because I know that they got inside.
Nobody else had to do all
So we
this
had people coming into a courthouse with no
Wow.
security at a time that we see on television mass shootings by idiots
Bro, we
who
all
look
know.
and take advantage
all
of all
know,
those
okay?
opportunities.
This is what we talk
I'm asking
about,
you,
politicians
what
on
measures were
board
taken specifically to contact witnesses, jurors, and victims of crimes who would come down to the courthouse doing their job as citizens to help keep all of us safe?
All right, so Councilmember Green, our office tried to go in
Tone out your
emergency
voice when
mode
addressing that
ourselves.
judge, sir.
We had our jury commissioner and her staff and other members of the JA's office try to make phone calls to jurors. And although some jurors came and were turned around, the majority of them had been notified. In addition to phone calls, text messages were also sent to those jurors. And as you know, the judges can't have contact with victims and witnesses and defendants. And so I had mentioned earlier, I had spoken with the district attorney as well as the chief public defender to make sure their attorneys knew to call those defendants and victims and witnesses and let them know that the building was going to be closed, but that criminal district court's operations were going to take place virtually. And as I also mentioned earlier, we were very pleased with their communication to those individuals because several of them appeared virtually. So those were the steps that we took.
Can I ask if anyone showed up at the courthouse within that group of persons that I mentioned?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they did. And they were greeted outside. We handled each one of them outside individually. Judge Campbell and members of my office was out there to inform the public and to assist them in getting into the virtual courts as requested.
In behalf of the entire criminal justice system, the city council, all who are associated with it, I offer apologies to those people. They are not getting paid. They come down and sometimes they put themselves at risk as witnesses, and the law was not followed with the provision of security for them. I'm very sorry to hear that that happened, and I will hope and I know that we will do everything that we can to make sure. I understand the concerns of defendants. I have made it clear during my time on this council that I am very concerned. There seems to be so little attention to the victims of crimes. That's why organizations are being formed, such as Voices of the Victims of Crime, because we so often forget that there are people out there who put themselves at risk, who come down and participate in our system of government and justice here, and they don't get the notification, they don't get the recognition, they certainly don't get any pay. They don't get what they deserve, but I appreciate what they do, and I'm just sorry that even one person came down because the law was not being followed relative to the provision of security for them at the courthouse. This is not the time to have that sort of thing happen in our city of New Orleans. But thank you all for the work that you did to turn them back so that they would not come inside the building. But I do want you to know that I'm well aware that some people got into the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you. I apologize for my tardiness. I'll try and be brief because many of the questions I asked or would have asked have already been answered. I think it's important to remember that there is a reason why the legislature requires that there be security in courtrooms. There's a reason why the legislature requires that sheriffs and other parties provide that security. And that's because when you're dealing with criminal cases as a plaintiff, as the prosecutor, as a defendant, or as a witness, or as a victim, emotions run very high. I know in my time as a public defender, emotions run high on the entire gambit of all those people. I mean, we know of instances in New Orleans just recently in the 7th Ward where there was an individual on his way to court for a hearing who a parent of a victim shot the individual in their car with their relative present. So when you talk about the danger that takes place in court and why security is necessary, it's not simply limited to any particular party. It's all parties, emotion runs high. Then on top of that, you stack the experience of victims who run the gambit from anywhere from someone who had a car broken into to a victim of sexual assault. They're in a very difficult, traumatic place. As Mr. Green said, they're there to provide testimony in a safe space. And to show up and figure out that space is not safe is disconcerting. I think that this has been a very unfortunate and very public learning experience. And I think that it's really unfortunate that I know there is a focus on 701 releases, as well there should be, and that the possibility that you'll have individuals that are waiting for their day in trial, have filed a speedy trial motion, and can also be released. But I think on the flip side of that, no one is served by this, because if you're an individual who is being held without bond on a very serious crime and you're looking forward to your day in court to resolve that, you're in the same boat as well, because then you're back in OPP, you're back waiting for an indeterminate period of time because, as you said, Judge, and I think you hit it down the head, this issue is not resolved. You kind of have a triage for the moment, but if we cannot get a commitment from the sheriff that this is going to be resolved and that the wheels of justice are going to move properly, it's just a reprieve until we have another incident.
Sure, it's a temporary fix.
Right, and I think that today really needs the beginning of a conversation with this council that helps fund criminal district court, with the judges who serve there and everyone involved, that we will not stand for the wheels to slow down. I understand there are challenges at the jail. We knew that before the sheriff, and we know it with this current sheriff. But the expectation, because a sheriff wears many hats, is that you have to be able to walk and chew bubblegum. And that's just what this is. I mean, everybody in government, whether you're a mayor, whether you're a council member, whatever you're at, whether you're a judge, we have to do multiple jobs at once. It's required of us. None of us are given a job that has a singular, easy purpose.
I don't agree
mean,
exactly with everything.
Every aspect
here,
of
but at the
government.
same time, listen,
even meter maids get accosted by people who don't want a ticket.
It's different tone.
Everybody has to deal with that, and the idea that it would be appropriate to not have criminal court function because there are problems at the jail. That's part of being sheriff. You got to figure that out.
Disagree
so I look forward to hearing what she has to say. I look forward to working with y'all, but we're committed to not letting this happen again.
And we are as well. So I welcome the council's assistance. We had explained yesterday that we can't just keep meeting every single day trying to figure out how we're going to proceed the next day. So we absolutely agree with everything that you said in regards to that issue, Councilmember Morrell.
And if I could just add that ideally, even though we are asking for at least 2 deputies in court, ideally we would really, the security, I guess the policies and procedures and what we received in terms of a security assessment really says that we should have at least 3 to 4 deputies in court. Because of the numbers of people, if you come to criminal court on any given day, I'm sure you remember, Councilman Morrell, that on any given day you could have a ton of people in criminal court, 20 or 30 or so people. And when you also have in custody defendants along with a large audience, and then, like you said, some of those will garner certain emotions about a particular case, 2 deputies are simply not enough. Again, trying to work with the sheriff as we did with the previous administration, we have accepted at least 2, if 2 could be provided. But while we have your attention, I'm going to request that if we can get 3 to 4, that is obviously much better for us, and that we have deputies who remain in court all day throughout the time in which the judges and our staff remain in court. Because based on the current staffing, I guess, shortages, and again, not just with this administration, it didn't start with this new administration, but as soon as the in-custody defendants are removed or taken back to OJC and court is concluded, then all of the deputies basically leave because they have to be reassigned to other sections or other divisions or other places within OPSO. And so again, you have an open courthouse where we do have deputies still at the entrances, but you have sections of court where we are working and where people are coming in with questions to have warrants recalled, anything that they might need on any particular day, and we don't have security. And security is not then provided to those citizens that may be in the court observing or, for other matters in the court, for other meetings.
One quick follow-up. So what you're saying is that, so you have, how many sheriffs do you have present for like first appearances?
So first appearances are generally handled at the 3 o'clock setting, and they have been virtual.
Since COVID.
Since COVID, that has been virtual because of the absence or lack thereof of security in the evening for the evening sessions and on the weekend sessions.
And so if I can interject, we did discuss that with the sheriff and her staffers yesterday evening. And they pledged to send some deputies to handle those first appearances. I'm not quite sure how many will be sent and whether it will be sufficient to go back to in person, but it was in fact discussed yesterday evening.
The challenge we're going to have is that most other courts across the state have transitioned away completely from first appearances.
Right.
And we have gotten a reprieve from a lot of standards other courts have because of COVID. However, you're going to get to a point at some point where a defendant and their attorney is going to challenge your ability to do these sort of activities virtually when no other parish is doing it. And that would be a really unfortunate position to be in, because we cannot constantly, as a city, be under a perpetual COVID emergency.
Sure.
I mean, the reality is every other parish has moved past it.
That's a fair
COVID obviously is still significantly present, and it's still scary, and people still wear their masks and the like. But when it comes to your rights and what you're entitled to as someone accused to a crime under the law, it would be really unfortunate if we don't resolve that. Someone files a complaint, files something that goes up to the Supreme Court, and they say no, because this person's rights weren't met properly, you've upended an entire case or a prosecution because you haven't gone back to what other parishes
Sure, and that's exactly what we discussed with the sheriff yesterday. Although we were discussing temporary fixes, we also explained to her how important it is for us to get back to operating the way we did before COVID, where every courtroom has security, including magistrate where they are conducting first appearances. We did impress upon her how important that is to us to get back to normal.
And I think it's also important for the attorneys who need to meet with their clients, especially if they're in custody clients. If those attorneys don't have access to those clients or access even to enter the OJC, then that creates significant delays as well. And so that tends to happen as well. So,
Councilmember King and Harris, just to piggyback off of what Deputy Chief Flemings Davillier said earlier, the cases that are coming in criminal court is not the first offense marijuana cases anymore. These cases are a higher level of offenses and need a different attention of security in the courthouse as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Morrell. You done?
Judge of the criminal court.
Thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues for the question. Like Councilmember Morrell, I think the questioning has been pretty thorough, and I'm not in search of the next great question. But what I do want to ask, and I think I'm going to ask this to everyone who comes before us, what does it mean when you say the criminal justice system? Chief Judge, what does that mean to you guys, criminal justice system?
Well, for me, criminal justice system means that we are making sure that each and every person is treated equally, fairly, that we as the judicial system are trying to move as efficiently and effectively as we can. I believe that the criminal justice system involves more than the judges. It involves several other stakeholders. So that is basically what it means to me. It means more than just those two words.
and I would add that, for all of the judges, criminal justice means really what is fair and right for the victims, as well as the constitutional rights of those who are accused defendants. So we have to balance public safety along with allegations, charges, bill of information, indictments that are filed against defendants. And in doing so and administering justice, then that brings in a number of other parties, as has been mentioned, victims, witnesses, case managers, social workers, public defender's office, obviously ADAs, the district attorney's office, the sheriff, and various other entities that we partner with on a daily basis in order to make the wheels of justice really turn. We can't do this by ourselves, obviously. It is a partnership, even with you all. And so, to me, the administration or criminal justice system is a system. And when there is a breakdown in the system, then obviously there's a whole breakdown in what we are able to do. We're not perfect, and we're not sitting here, as criminal court and the judge is saying that we are perfect. We're working very, very hard every day to better ourselves and to improve the court. But in terms of the entire system, we need all of our partners to really understand their role in the system.
Then your answer, I don't need the follow-up question. Councilmember Moreno and I were talking earlier about, for those who've sat in criminal court, I've participated in those trials before for character for young men that you've gone to ask for assistance. Judge Johnson would routinely ask me to come down to talk to folk who maybe we could talk to in the back chamber before they came in the front of the system. But what we've noticed over the years, and what we do know is New Orleans is famous for threats. Witnesses and jurors have been threatened in the past. We've seen folk on both sides kind of gather, and we know that that happens in the system. Why? Well, what I'm going to do is kind of segue to what Councilmember Moreno asked about a plan. She didn't go deep into it, but I think she was on the right track about why the importance of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee is, so that you can have contingency plans. I think it highlights, Councilmember Moreno, the reason for planning, anticipating situations like this. Was there a backup plan in case we didn't have security? Is there an ultimate plan? And how can we begin to use the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee to make sure that they meet to deal with all of these knowns and unknowns moving forward?
And so, as I can think of, the history of, myself being a prosecutor and being a judge for 13 years, I don't think I've ever known the criminal district court to be shut down in the fashion in which it was on Monday morning. And so I do agree that we should all criminal justice stakeholders should meet together and decide on a backup plan. I was not given any fair notice of it. As I said, I got the call after 5 p.m. on Sunday and tried to move as quickly as I could to ensure the safety of individuals that I knew would be coming to criminal district court on Monday morning. So, Councilmember Thomas, you are correct. We need to utilize that committee for instances like this, although I'm very hopeful that we would not ever have to do what was done on a Monday morning again.
Before we move to the next presenter, Councilmember Green has a follow-up.
I just wanted to, because sometimes my voice gets emotional when I focus on victims of crime, people who have been ignored in this city.
Oh, somebody told him we watching. Yeah, watch tone, young sir.
I didn't want it to be misconstrued relative to my emotion that I didn't thank you all. I want to thank you all for what you did between Sunday at 5 o'clock and that morning when people were going to be coming in and being exposed to insecure situations, or situations where there wasn't security. So just thank you and the other judges for the work that you did at a very trying time. All of our discussion should end with this. This should never happen again. People should not come down to a courthouse where there has been violence before involving witnesses and involving perpetrators' families and the like. They should never come down to a courthouse again where there is not adequate security. Thank you all for the work that you did on Sunday evening.
We have some public comment. Also, the cards. I know some people have signed up to comment on each and every one of the presenters. I don't know if you want to wait until all the presenters present or individually, but I'll call your name in case you want to present on each one. The first one is Ms. Kim Ford.
This is my favorite part of the council meetings, when we get people get to come up here and do it. Ms. Kim Ford, take it away, love.
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning, Ms. Ford.
So thankful for the democratic process where the community gets to come in and actually speak. But I just want to say that as a longtime advocate for criminal justice reform, I say when I saw the news that the courthouse was closed, it shook me, because it means one thing: we got a new sheriff in town. And the way things have always been done, they're not going to be done anymore. And guess what? We needed some shaking up in criminal court. New Orleans has the highest wrongful conviction rate in the country. So, hey, we need some shaking up over there. Just today, this morning, for 7 o'clock, I met with a mother whose son was found not guilty from a non-unanimous jury. And he'd been in jail 4 years, not able to make probation. So when they found him, they couldn't find him guilty. They locked him up again. still 4 years waiting on a trial. He gets the trial, it comes back non-unanimous. So we got plenty issues over in criminal court. And guess what? I'm not saying that we don't need security. What citizen in this city is going to say that we don't need security in our criminal court buildings? For sure. And guess what? If you committing a crime, then guess what? You need to go to jail. But that does not mean that you get to criminalize me. And I'm going to tell you something. Going into criminal court as a citizen is terrifying when the criminal sheriffs are there waiting for you when you get there. And I've seen the many mothers and grandmothers walk up all of those steps, whether they're going there as a victim or whether they're going there as a defendant. And the stress that they go through trying to get in there. And if we're going to correct something in criminal court, then let's get some cell phones in there so people can contact their loved ones to let them know the outcome of a situation that has happened in that courtroom. Because we have none of that, and you can't bring a cell phone in there.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Let's go.
Peter Waring.
Let's go.
Waring filled out under every section. You want us to comment on this? Or wait until all the presentations. It's up to you.
Hi, my name is Peter Waring. I'm the past president of the Rotary Club of New Orleans, and a citizen of New Orleans. I'm passionate about this town, and I'm very, very worried. We have a situation where the citizenry is losing faith in all aspects of government.
I've met this gentleman. I was impressed. Listen up. I don't know what he's going to say. An office of the Independent Police Monitor. When I met him.
We have a sheriff. We have an office of the Inspector General. Two of those institutions are overseen by an ethics review board. The ethics review board has the support of a citizen committee called the QARAC, Quality Advisory Review Committee, and that QARAC has not been populated for the last year. They're a year late in populating that committee, and this city council is responsible for appointing someone to that committee. City council hasn't done that last year, and another year deadline is about to pass without it happening. The mayor's office is responsible for appointing a person to that committee. I was appointed to that committee, had to resign because I serve on the old Metairie Commission in Metairie. I'm a New Orleans resident, but I'm helping them out because they need an architect. Something has got to be done in this town. This sheriff is a former independent police monitor. She was the independent police monitor because she refused to allow herself to be fired for cause from the Inspector General's office. Now, that was considered not acceptable for her to be fired, so she was installed in a completely independent office. Now, she's moved from that office into the sheriff's office, and she's indicated a degree of non-performance, I think is the best way to put it. That is absolutely intolerable
clearly
to this
upset,
city.
But he's being respectful.
I'm telling you,
he's choosing his words
as a
right.
person who has
You know,
represented
again,
businessmen in the city of New Orleans,
with
been
everybody,
a lifelong
but we
resident
gotta
of this
keep it
town,
respectful. Shout out to Chase
something
Cash.
has got to be done. Thank you. And I'm working hard to serve in every way I can, but this is out of control.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you.
Any online comments?
None for this item.
Judges, thank you for your presentation. Next.
Thank you very much.
We have District Attorney Jason Williams. Thank you, judges.
Oh, baby.
Thank you all for having us.
Oh, baby. Here we go. Here we go. I mean, yeah, listen, Tracey, or you got to do me a name. But no, I agree. Listen, there's so many people who said they weren't receiving me because of the tone that I was using, which is one of the reasons why I started the whole running reporter thing. So look, I had to play by the rules, so everybody else does too. Then be the breaks.
We'll start as soon as we finish working out some of the logistics. Good afternoon to you, Mr. District Attorney.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Council and Committee.
Are we ready yet? Okay.
Well, looks like the council's just getting everything settled, waiting, standing by. So yeah, man, leave some comments in the chat. I don't know what y'all thought. I'll do kind of a recap of what we just heard from criminal district court judge Pittman. She said the need for them is, there was a promise of having 26.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. You're still the best
to ever do it. And that was from the old sheriff, and now the new sheriff. They would like to have up to 4 deputies per court, plus people.
Thank you, Chairman Thomas and members of this committee.
So
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Morrell, Council President Moreno, Councilman Eugene Green. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for having the entire system here. I really appreciate that question you asked earlier, Mr. Chair, because systems are important. It is an adversarial system, but in order for something to be a system like an ecosystem, it has to work together and collaboratively. Whether there is a storm barreling down or whether it's a crisis, whether it's an emergency, it has to be able to work together collaboratively. So I appreciate you ending on that question. I'm joined here today by my Chief Administrative Officer, Mithan Kamath. Many of you know him. Executive Assistant to the DA, Micah Entz. Many of you know her and have worked with her. And I also want to recognize, joining us at the table, a member of our DA Summer Academy. He's one of several Job One interns working with our office this summer. Mr. Aiden, thank you. I won't make you take on too much of the presentation today, but I appreciate your assistance. It's important that young people see careers for themselves in the criminal legal system and see themselves having a place in City Hall, which is why we're glad to partner with Job One and have young people working with us in law enforcement. At the beginning of the year, amidst a very present and clear crime surge taking place on our city streets and across the country, my team and I developed and presented to you all a 7-point plan to surge back against the crime and increase safety in the city. In line with our priorities, this plan was and continues to be focused on the violent offenders that the public is rightly concerned with: murder, shootings, rapes, sexual assault, armed robbery, carjackings, and even brazen criminal activities like illegal stunt driving taking place in our communities. This plan focuses on the crimes that keeps mothers and fathers like me and families up at night. While there's much for all of us to do, we are working very diligently at the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office to execute on these 7 items that we described and worked with this council to put in place. The first prong of the strategy was to increase safety by holding violent offenders accountable, prioritizing the screening and prosecution of these violent crimes, even setting aside the public health and moral imperative to do so. As an office, we simply could not afford to waste time, woman power, manpower, and money prosecuting every simple minor drug offense or misdemeanor crimes that exist. We tried to use our diversion program to deal with those matters so we can prioritize violent crimes in the courtrooms. To ensure that we are screening violent crime cases effectively and efficiently over the last several months, I have reorganized and restructured the screening division of our office, also known as Intake. I've recently appointed Andre Godin to serve as chief of that screening division. Some of you probably recognize the name of Andre Godin from his work at this table with the city's health department, EMS, and the coroner's office on combating substance use disorder and drug overdose deaths in the city of New Orleans using ODMAP, the coroner's office, and certain technology that was working in Baltimore with the HIDUP program. With his track record as a successful prosecutor in our office of nearly 12 years and a deep understanding of the role that technology can play in being a force multiplier and streamlining interagency communication, which we'll talk more about in detail in a moment, we're confident that he can continue to move the screening division forward. As many of you also know, I recently brought back Assistant District Attorney Karen Avery, who formerly worked in our office to solely oversee strategically the screening of domestic violence cases, which have grown exponentially over the pandemic. Ms. Avery was actually just present before the full City Council just this past Thursday advocating for the Domestic Abuse Fatality Review Team Ordinance, and our office is looking forward to being a member of that team. And I want to thank this council and councils many years ago for seeing this work, seeing these survivors, and recognizing the need to pass that legislation. And I want to thank you for adding funds to our budget for our specialized DV unit in the first place with dedicated appropriations in our 2022 budget. Thank you for that work. With more cases, we need more people to do that work. Finally, we brought on or reassigned 3 new ADAs as screeners to help this division cut through the backlog of cases that built up in our office during the course of the pandemic. Just as important, work through the increasing number of new cases that are still coming in at an unprecedented clip that we're receiving from law enforcement on the account of this new crime surge. I know we hear about the carjackings. You may not hear about the DV cases, but there are many more of them than there are carjackings. All of these cases are important. With regards to our surge back, this also includes the additional and new work in our Violent Crimes Unit, VCU, which is led by ADA Alex Kalinda, who is working extremely close with the NOPD's Violent Crime Abatement Investigative Team, also known as VCATE. Since beginning of the year, my office has accepted 95% of murder and manslaughter cases that are referred to this office. We've accepted 82% of the robbery cases referred to this office and accepted 73% of car theft cases referred to our office. As always, this data is updated monthly on our websites at orleansda.com. You can use them very similar to the way that you use the databases that you all share on your council website set up by Jeff Asher. And we do that so that the public can track this information themselves. Moreover, we have implemented new policies with regards to 701 expirations on February the 16th, 2022 through today. There have only been 8 genuine 701 expirations. Only one of these individuals was released from custody, and that case had to be refused due to lack of victim cooperation, which we will address in detail.
I know the audio keeps going out, but I think what we do need to pay attention to is the fact that there's been a lot of news about 701 holds.
That's a
and
rate of
according to the
approximately
DA, what you said right here,
24
there's
in
only
a
been
year
8
compared to 885,
genuine
which is reported in
701
2021.
expirations, and only one of
Also
those people was released from jail. So
cannot
this
say
again
this
goes
enough,
against the
for the
disinformation
public,
a lot of times that you see
for
being
this
spread out there.
council, for city leaders, for the media, and anyone who believes that once an arrest is made, that is the end of the story. For a prosecutor anywhere in this country to accept the case and bring it to trial and secure conviction, we need evidence, witness testimony, and timely reports. That is just the magic formula necessary to bring victim cases forward. Sufficient evidence to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt is not just a Jason Williams standard, it is our country standard. We often need victims to be willing to come forward, not just at a time to file a police report, but when it is time to come to court and provide witness testimony. Without evidence or proof of a crime, there is no way for any prosecutor in office in this country to legally or morally move that case forward. This is not, again, philosophical or political ideology. This is not progressive. This is simply the law. I'm happy to note that our screening team, especially now with Chief Godin at the helm, is working very closely with our partners at the NOPD to improve the everyday, every week work of processing and transmitting evidence from their respective agencies. But I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, the job is not to just throw anyone in jail. It must be the right person. We must have competent evidence, because when you don't, then you find lawsuits that wind up here. And then the city council's got to figure out how to pay an innocent person for being in jail for the past 20 years. And our public is left with dealing with the real offender left in their communities because we didn't get it right. We are dedicated to getting it right. The second prong of my strategy is to increase safety and hold violent offenders accountable with regards to carjackings. Accountability by prosecuting these offenses as armed robberies. We do this to increase the jail sentences because these crimes are dangerous. Under Louisiana law, an adult prosecuted for carjacking faces a sentence of 2 to 20 years, but the overwhelming majority of carjacking cases in this parish and in all parishes involve guns. When we substitute armed robbery charges in appropriate carjacking cases, that perpetrator faces then 10 years to 99 years in jail. Since the start of the year, we've already had the occasion to take 8 cases that were referred to us and charge them as armed robberies, and we will continue that work. All of these cases are currently still pending resolutions in our trials divisions. The third problem of the strategy that we discussed was utilizing the firearm sentencing provisions to ensure minimum sentence requirements for gun crimes. I went to the legislature recently asking them to give you all the power to decide how we manage guns in the city of New Orleans. This is a sportsman's paradise, Louisiana is, but there is nothing to hunt on Bourbon Street. There's nothing to hunt on the streets of New Orleans East or the Lower Ninth Ward or Central City, but your neighbors. So having AK-47s and having easy access to firearms is a problem for this city that doesn't exist in other parishes. That was met on deaf ears at the legislature. But I will say to you, and I'll say to you again, I will do everything in my power to make sure that we're holding people accountable who are possessing illegal firearms. Over the last several months, in each and every case where appropriate, our lawyers have filed motions under the Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 893.1, to ensure that if an individual is tried and convicted for a crime and there is sufficient evidence for finding that a gun was involved, that person will, in fact, serve a greater sentence than they otherwise would in Orleans Parish. For example, just to suss this out a little bit, just in the last 30 days or so alone, we filed 35 such motions. Since jury trials have resumed in court, since the judges allowed those to move forward, and I have a bit more on that shortly, we have already been able to invoke the firearm sentencing provision twice. During the first week of trials, we secured a conviction of Trey Williams for the manslaughter of his uncle. With only a manslaughter charge, that defendant was facing 0 to 40 years in prison. But because we filed the firearm sentencing motion, the minimum amount of prison time that the defendant facing was up to 20 years in jail. The judge ultimately, after sentencing hearing, sentenced him to 28 years in jail. Also, just a couple weeks ago, we were able to increase a sentence after securing a conviction of Jamison Jenkins for attempted manslaughter after a shooting that occurred outside of Harris Casino. Without filing our firearm provision, the defendant was only facing 0 to 20 years. After we filed that motion, the least term of years he can get is 15 years. The fourth prong that we discussed was a strategy for pushing the use of Gwen's Law hearings in domestic violence cases. As you know, Gwen's Law allows us as prosecutors to call for more purposeful, more involved contradictory bail hearings for domestic violence offenders and
if y'all want to know more about Gwen's Law and all of the
circumstances.
domestic violence issues that
My
are happening in the
administration is
city of
taking
New
full
Orleans, I would
advantage
advise y'all
of this provision to
make
ensure
sure y'all
that
follow
those
Erin's
accused
Messing
of
Plays
DV
on
crimes
Instagram.
are not
I know
allowed to
she
be
is
released
with
before they
the
have
district attorney's
cooled
office
down,
to
before they have
sort of
calmed down,
push,
before
the
there
Gwen's
is a
Law
detailed
legislation in
hearing
the city.
for a court to evaluate and figure out whether or not they pose a potential danger to the survivors and to the community. And I say survivors because oftentimes they may be beating a domestic partner. But the survivors of domestic violence are those children who witness those beatings as well. And these Gwen's Law hearings, these timeouts, provide a pause for those children who are traumatized in the face of domestic violence. Since we have been in office, we have filed a motion for a Gwen's Law hearing close to 30 times, and 19 of those coming just since January 1, when we began putting our violent crime strategy into place in magistrate court. These cases include one involving a defendant who had several charges against the exact same victim. The Gwen's Law hearing was granted when it was determined the defendant was calling the victim from jail and was sending people to her house to attempt to get her to drop the charges. Because of our argument in that hearing, that Gwen's Law hearing, the magistrate judge had bail set at close to $300,000. It would have been far less but for that hearing. Another example, a case in which a defendant was accused of shooting a 1-year-old child in the head while the child was in the care of their mother. In this case, the Gwen's Law hearing allowed for prosecutors to successfully argue that the initial bond amount of only $600,000 should be increased to over $1.7 million.
And Councilmember Moreno,
our office accepted both cases. They are proceeding through the criminal justice process as we speak. As I've always said, prosecuting domestic violence cases are our most difficult task because oftentimes the victim is still in love with the offender. Oftentimes the victim still shares the bank account, a car, a home with the offender.
Man, I didn't know this meeting was going to be this messy.
We will keep pushing this work. We will continue to be creative. We will continue to use the Gwen's Law hearings to the fullest extent of the law. If we can stop violence in the homes, we can reduce violence in our streets. The fifth prong of my strategy was to increase safety, was securing grand jury indictments for violent crimes, as well as calling on and convening a second special grand jury to handle the surge of violent cases. Historically, other DAs have had grand jury hearings on Thursdays. We have a special one on Wednesdays as well. With the sustained challenges last year and into the year resulting from the pandemic and hurricane-induced court closures, especially prior to the resumption of jury trials, one of the most important ways our office could ensure accountability was to impanel the special Orleans Parish Grand Jury to hear evidence about some of the most serious crimes that occur in our neighborhood. The judges didn't allow us to move as quickly to try cases at Tulane and Broad as some other parishes, but we were able to call our own grand jurors to South White Street to continue to hear cases so that we could seek grand jury indictments and hold violent offenders accountable and demand bail setting. Since the start of the calendar year, we have already secured, in this calendar year, we've already secured over 40 grand jury indictments for violent crimes, consisting of approximately 150 counts in total. Counts, not charges. Some of the indictments include just 2 days after I presented the plan to you all, a special grand jury indicted 4 individuals who were arrested for committing a string of armed robberies, including and involving 11 separate victims across New Orleans in one day. Defendant Tyrone Steele was indicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated burglary, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary, plus a superseding indictment for an additional homicide and 2 other shootings. In the matter of Tyrone Steele, I want to mention and go back to the need for victim cooperation. We talked about that earlier. That is essential. Ms. Steele was on our streets because the person who could ID him was not willing to come forward and cooperate. And we need every actor in the system working to make sure that victims, witnesses, survivors, and jurors feel safe when they continue to participate in the court system. The 4 defendants involved in the murder of Miss Linda Fricky also were presented at this special grand jury. They were scheduled to be in court just yesterday. Related to the 6th prong of the strategy to increase safety, we presented to this body the important need to address the sustained court closures and the sustained and repeated suspension of jury trials. It was to make sure that we could do everything in our power to secure convictions via guilty pleas by using honest work and using evidence. Without the leverage, however, of jury trials, it is not always easy to negotiate a guilty plea. But our prosecutors have stepped up to this challenge. Since the start of this year, we have secured over 1,100 convictions via guilty pleas, including over 125 for murder, manslaughter, rape, and armed robbery. This data also is updated monthly on our website at orleansda.com for the public to check our work themselves. Our list of conviction via guilty plea this year include notable examples like the case involving the murder of our senior and elder Portia Pollock last year. Of course, even with jury trials up and running, the guilty plea is a powerful measure of accountability in our system, and sometimes for victims and for victims' families, it is the best way to resolve the case. We will continue to hold individuals accountable in this manner where appropriate. On that note, like in Ms. Pollock's case, trial is not for all survivors. The brother and the family of Ms. Pollock were very, very clear about the desire to resolve this case quickly in this year and to not come back and forth to court to watch defense attorneys' wranglings to work for their clients, but to bring closure to this family. The emotional and mental anguish of seeing the person who has harmed your loved one come back and forth to court throughout hearings and trials sometimes is just too much for survivors and families to bear.
Okay.
Ms. Pollock's brother even commented that considering everything they would have to go through in a trial to get to trial, conviction by way of a plea deal was what was best for their family, and we
All right, I'm about to bring in a guest right now.
their opinion.
You heard the DA talking a lot about, and you are on right now, Aaron. How are you?
Don't mean much.
Hi, hello.
Tell everybody about your organization first and foremost.
I am Aaron's Nesting Place. I'm an advocate and a survivor of domestic violence. I have a transitional shelter on the West Bank that I work with other organizations to try to house and provide resources for victims of domestic violence. I'm also a community advocate. I advocate for stopping the violence in our communities.
What did you think so far of what District Attorney Jason Williams has said, especially just about him trying to push for more rights for domestic violence victims?
Of course, I totally agree with that. The Gwen's law is going to help with victims feeling more safe in the city. It's like you can go to jail for domestic violence, be out in a few minutes, and as we've seen, they can occur again. Like, I forgot the name of the musician who died. Like, his daughter was going through a domestic violence situation.
I covered that story, yeah.
Yeah, and then he came out and he killed her father. You know what I'm saying? So we have to have some mechanisms in place to be more proactive. We are working like behind the scenes after everything is already played out. So I think the Gwen's law would help get some control. And we need more advocates, like more on the ground advocates, to make sure that the mental health part, plays into the effect. Is this person, what's the mental health of this person before you just give them a bond and set them back out into the street? A lot of things needs to be evaluated. People do things as a cry for help. So it's as he say, what's the definition of the judicial system? That's also the help to provide.
Yeah, that was Councilmember Oliver Thomas posing that question. Yeah. So just kind of, as far as, give people what Gwen's law is and what it can do, especially if the district attorney has that power.
What it does is it gives them the power to review that person before they're able to get a bond. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We have victims out here who their abuser has a multitude of charges, record numbers. Like when they give you the copy of the report number, it goes down the line. A lot of that needs to be taken into play before a person is given a bond. If you just have this one little happenstance, you know what I'm saying? You shouldn't have to be given this high bond if this is your first time. Slap on the hand. Let's get some, some rehab, some help for that person. But some of these people are repeat offenders and they don't care. They're like, okay, I'm gonna bond out and I'll be back at your house, before you get off of work. And literally they do. So this kind of helps for them to see this person, if they're a repeat offender, if they need some assistance, if they need anger management, if they need some type of therapy or some type of assistance, some type of mental health review before they actually give them a bond.
So Gwen's law doesn't just sort of, it's not there just specifically to protect victims, but part of Gwen's law is there for the accusers, the people doing this, for them to get help as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they look at the potential threat of the defendant poses to the victim and the family of the victim and the members, and making sure that it's made public, especially for children. So that's another thing, like taking into place the children, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he talked about that because when we talk about victims of domestic violence, we typically think about the person who is on the receiving end of said violence. But as you're about to say, there's so many more victims.
Yeah, especially the children, and then a lot of the victims are afraid of the after effects. Like, okay, you went to court with this person because they abused you, but then you have 5 kids with this person and you all have to exchange off. You have to still co-parent. What's the going forward with that? Mm-hmm. Some people are afraid to co-parent because you have to meet your said abuser. Sometimes in a strange place, there's not that handoff place anymore where there's an officer there. We could barely get officers on a 911 situation. I can't call 911 and say, hey, they're about to do this exchange off. She's afraid. They are literally afraid. And what do?
Now, let me ask you this. Let me stop you there. Do you participate in these handoffs with some of the people that you advocate for?
I've had some where I have fallen back from that because, I have to also look at the climate of the city at the moment. And I'm here by myself, and I have to get out of my superwoman mode and think that I could do that because the crime that's being played out now, it's not what I'm used to. I'm 48, so I grew up in the old New Orleans. This is some new stuff. They have no respect for anyone. So as much as I would like to go out there and be that person, I can't do that. I also cannot hire someone to be that said security and put that person in jeopardy because I don't have said connections with NOPD. You know what I mean?
What do you think about the DA saying that, there's a lot of media attention on the robberies and the shootings, but the DV trials, into the tens of thousands of trials and cases and responses, a lot of people don't realize that, listen, I think that we all have our fair criticism of NOPD, but I don't think how many responses people understand that the NOPD is going to simply for DV and, for domestic violence cases. from what you know and the people you serve, how often is this happening where police are having to be called out for just, from everything from a simple dust up to actual physical contact and even sometimes gunplay?
To be honest, in my opinion, I feel like 95% of the crime that's going on here is in domestic violence situation in some sort of capacity. May not be the person you're dating, but you had relations with, meaning that was your friend, your partner, your business partner, your person at one point, and something went wrong. You understand what I'm saying? So this is not turf war. This is not, oh, I don't want you uptown, you belong downtown. It's half the time it's not about that. A lot of it is people abusing each other on the internet, you know what I'm saying? The disrespect, the bullying, that type of thing. We have a lot of rap beef that's going on that's playing out, over rap songs, And most of the people, like I say, it's domestic because if I'm a rapper, you're a rapper, we're in relations, we're in the same category, it's still domestic. It's not a drug war we got to have going on, and half of the time, if you want to be honest, in my opinion, a lot of the breaking windows and stealing cars are still led by another entity. You understand what I'm saying? In the background, somebody in the background who's getting a profit off of what's being done. So they're using these young men who don't have direction, who may not have the light of day to know that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, but they're gaslighting that person into believing that this is the lifestyle. I'm going to keep money in your pocket if you do this. That's domestic abuse because you're mentally abusing these people, these kids that don't really have. They haven't seen anything else, and you're selling them the dream that they're going to just, oh, you're going to steal a car, you're going to get this money, you're going to get the stuff that's in the car, and what happens next? You're not giving them that.
Right.
And that's half of what's going on. And so until we get the resources that's needed, to be honest, when it comes to domestic violence, we don't have that many resources. Right. I'm a resource, but I also need a resource. And sometimes the resource that the city has appointed uses me as a resource, and we work back and forth. Right. And if it's us 2, 3, 4, 5, that's not enough for 95% of the city that's going crazy because they don't know how to properly articulate their pain, their hurt, their disappointment. You know what I'm saying? Things that did not go right for them. They don't know how to properly articulate that. It's not fighting. It's not, just a simple beef. They want to kill. That means that we don't know the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships and proper conflict resolution. Who's teaching that?
A lot of when people talk about policing, especially when we got to the place where people were talking about, do we bring the National Guard in? It's this idea of community policing, and we don't want to militarize the police. But listen, you were very open about your story, and I'll let you tell parts of it that you want to tell. But you were very open about your past and how you ended up in your situation now. Based on just the, and I'm speaking between the lines, but you could get more into it. Based on just the culture of what you've seen, the street culture and all of that, is there any protection right now for these women, even from a community aspect?
No, not in my opinion. I have a facility, and as you can see, I'm at home. I'm hardly never there. I don't feel protected. I'm not going to ask anyone to come and meet me in a place that I don't feel protected. And I feel like when it comes to street stuff, I'm not really afraid of very much. We can handle things in different ways. I choose not to do that. But if you want to stay on the straight and narrow and doing things that the city would like for us to handle things, I don't feel safe. And I'm not going to ask anybody else to come out into an environment where we don't feel safe. And it's not like I'm complaining and I'm not trying to be a resource on that end too. I sit on the PCAP board. I am a faithful PCAP member. Meaning that PCAP? PCAP is the Police Community Advisory Board. That's where they allow community members to sit on the board with the police to help them, get community engagement, in other words. And if we're running into brick walls, we just had a one-on-one with Captain, and I'm saying the same thing I've been saying for 2 years. So I'm a liaison, and I don't feel safe, so.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. It's just, it's frustrating to hear that even the people who are trying to do the work, so we don't have any protection for the community. And now you tell people, people often, well, what are you going to do as community members? People who are trying to do something don't even feel protected in order to do the work. So Aaron from Aaron's Nest in Place.
One thing else I wanted to say, not just with the domestic violence, I've been on a situation where I've been a part of the community problems. Let's be honest on that. Right. You know what I mean? So as you say, me putting myself in that position, it's not the same. So we can't go down this avenue of what was going on then, what's going on now. It's not the same. And to be honest, like as an advocate, sometimes I feel like I'm gaslighting the community into believing that there's hope, because on the back end, listening to this city council meeting, I feel some type of way, you know, and that's half of the time why you don't see me on lives or doing this and that, because I don't believe it, and I'm giving that to our community. You understand what I'm saying by that? So
it's a hopelessness. I understand.
like, until I feel that, I can't push that. And every time I push, call the police, do this, the police, I can get them. But then I'm calling who's supposed to be my contact. I'm emailing, they call me back 2-3 weeks later. You making me out of a lie.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you're going through this, but keep up. You know, you're not gaslighting, because we know that your heart is in it. So again, tell everyone how they can find you, support you, and all that.
I am Aaron's Nesting Place on Instagram. My website is www.aaronsnestingplace.org. You can call me directly, 504-339-9330. I'm always available 24/7. If I can't help you, I have a resource that can. And if not, we're going to not stop till we find what you need.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll go back now to
I
the.
appreciate you so much.
For sure. We'll now go back to the live with Jason Williams, the City Council meeting. This is the Criminal Justice System Committee, which is led by Oliver Thomas. We'll go back to the meeting now.
Thank you.
Police officers should not be standing at computers, sharing a computer in the district to make a zip drive of the evidence we need to screen the case and try a case. That takes them off the street for far longer than they need to be off the street. They shouldn't have to go back and circle back to make sure that we have the evidence that we need. There should be a way for them to log that information up into a cloud, and we can pull it off that cloud ourselves and creating force multipliers to keep officers on the street because that's where we need them and that's where they want to be. And we want to do everything we can to support that. We are, of course, happy to once again provide any and all background information on all the requests we've made. Council members, I know that your job is not easy. I know that you all are working early mornings and late hours, meeting with constituents, meeting with other city leaders, and really just listening to the city and trying to prioritize all the needs that seem to be pressing all at once. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your support. Our entire team at the DA's office are public servants, and they relish in doing this work, and we look forward to any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris, followed by Councilmember Green. I see our machines are working. I think they're working anyway. The screen is on. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Dave Williams, I'm going to start backwards and then move forwards. On the cloud-based technology for interagency data transfer, do you have a price tag on that?
There are a number of cloud-based technologies that exist. Case 365 could really have our office communicating with the police department via Hexagon and 911 for close to $100,000, probably less than $100,000. That's the only initial cost. The yearly cost is under or close to $50,000. That's not a lot of money to invest in the force multiplier that it creates. The issue with screening cases, we want to be able to screen cases in 5 days. But when we have a department that is undermanned and under-resourced, they're still trying to get information together themselves to get to us past that 5-day and sometimes past that 701 day. So cloud-based technology that would allow police officers to move nimbly and quickly and allow them to move on to the second call for service while they're still dealing with the first. I think for less than $100,000, we connect these things. It would also, I plan on working with the sheriff and our new clerk so that we can hopefully finally create some synergy in the system, as the chair brought out, so that our systems can talk to each other even when people are not talking, even after hours, so that as they're looking at software and technology, perhaps we can move to the same technology and there can be some economies of scale and savings in costs.
So for $100K, it would cover your office and NRPD and potentially the clerk of court.
for $100,000, all of the systems will be able to talk because we've got NOPD and 911 Director Morris. They've been working on the Hexagon technology. It should be ready to come online, I believe, this fall. I know that Nathaniel Weaver is working very quickly to figure out all the ways that it can interface with other government agencies. It's $80,000.
Okay.
There's an $8,000 storage and backup because we want to make sure that we can pull that information quickly for trials for judges and defense opposite counsel as well. And of course, implementation and training, which would be a one-time piece.
Is there any other technology that you need or that could help you prosecute cases quicker?
You know, I think when you look at what we've been through, an unprecedented.
All right, so looks like we're about to start getting into
citywide
this
shutdown
discussion,
that shut
this
us all
larger discussion about surveillance, which you're going to hear a lot
the
about
judges
today.
decided to shut down courts longer in Orleans Parish than any other parish. If we don't learn anything from COVID, shame on us. All of the triage responses we were able to put in place, whether it be virtual hearings, whether it be Zoom hearings, whether it be arraignments, we need to not just rely on those for those moments. We need to figure out how to work those things into our quotidian daily work so that when an emergency happens, when there's a staffing shortage at the jail, we're not saying, well, we always did it this way. We need to be able to keep the courts open. It's important to keep everybody safe. But it's important that justice move forward, and we all need to be able to think nimbly and think quickly. And technology is that place that can do that for us. So a cloud-based system that allows all agencies to communicate, that would allow this council, frankly, to check our work at budget times, to see if we're actually doing what we said we were going to do, to see how many calls for services there were, to see how often we brought charges against those individuals when they went to trial. You all be able to check that from City Hall with proper cloud-based technology. We spend $6.7 million on the real-time camera center. But can we honestly call that a real-time camera center if we're not manning it in real time? So, you know, having human beings intimately tied to the technology that we have in place is a game changer. License plate readers have proved very valuable to the NOPD and the DA's office. Cameras have proved very valuable. But they could be even more valuable if there were human beings manning the real-time camera center in real time. So when there is a call for service, there's immediate triangulation that can assist NOPD officers on the street. There's one case, Christmas shooting from 2019.
So I talked to the DA about this a while back, and basically his
smart,
point here is that
homicide detective Rael Johnson,
if
chief,
we had license plate readers, we can actually like track the car that got stolen in real time and like
cases. He's unwrapping gifts
really just track people where they are.
Family.
So again, this is
Christmas Eve,
definitely getting to conversations about police surveillance and all
on the
of
way
that.
to that call, someone from the real-time camera center was able to provide him with descriptions, people that were there, cars. So he's already able to start his work. He's already to start figuring out who to question first, who to segregate. And so that was an example of using that real-time camera center in a way that was able to create a force multiplier with a detective working on Christmas Day who didn't have as many detectives as officers as he needed to solve a case, get us the evidence we need, and now that person's off the street.
So just to sum it up, NRPD is currently using technology that aids you in your prosecution of these cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we need to systematize it, and I believe that requires a bit more financial investment in the human beings required to use the technology, manning that technology, because it all needs guardrails, and a computer can only do so much, a camera can only do so much. A human being has to understand it and has to try the case.
I want to talk to you about the pace of jury trials. You said you're on track to do 96 jury trials in 2022. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. We have tried 24 cases since the judges have allowed us to try cases. And at that pace, we had
Talked
7
about this
set
earlier.
for
Somebody had a
trial
question
this week.
about is 30
At the
jury
pace
trials
we're
a
on,
lot?
that's
No,
a
because they're
clip of
trying to
96,
do 96
this year. And if we compare that to the 50 trials that were tried in the last full year before the pandemic of 2019, that was only 50.
Did you have any set for this Monday when court had to close?
We did have cases set. We got on the phone, and I appreciate the sheriff reaching out and getting as many people, city leaders, on the phone as she could. We were able to discuss the needs.
So it's interesting. So while
we were able
we
to
may have
discuss it
found
each
out,
Monday
like,
night
yo, the
as
court
well.
was closing.
From what I understand,
it sounds
we
like the
continue to
sheriff
have
did her
these
due diligence in
conversations so
reaching
that,
out to everybody that
it
needed
is
to be reached
known
out that
which
this was coming.
cases, which courts have trials set on which day, so that we can absolutely have sheriffs present in those sections of court, so there are no cases that have to be continued. The sheriff committed to that. We also, the judges, some of them were able to articulate the fact that they don't have a need for a security presence in their courtroom, which I thought was really smart and nimble, to be able to say all of my cases are virtual tomorrow. I won't need sheriff's deputies. I just need to make sure you have the inmates brought in for the virtual hearings. A couple of judges, I think it might have been Judge Holmes, was able to know her docket well enough to articulate the fact that all of the defendants in her section of court were on bond, so they could appear. They would not have to appear, and the sheriff would not have to do anything to do that. So there was a lot of cooperation and coordination to figure out what the needs assessment was for each section of court. And it's my understanding that that has been articulated and will be followed through with fidelity over the next couple of days, such that we can get to a point where all sections will be manned.
What would be your ideal pace of jury trials in a year? So we're on track for 96. What would be ideal for you?
You know, it's I like court. I like being in front of a judge. I like being in front of a jury. It allows private citizens to come and actually see how justice is administered. I think the theory of inertia is right. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And this system has been at rest. The trial system has been at rest for far too long, with no input from other stakeholders. So that when we were allowed to try cases, we wanted to be ready on every case we could be ready for. But that is dependent upon witnesses coming forward, evidence being available. So we wanted to show and prove that the lawyers in the DA's office could try more cases than any other parish in a week. And we showed that in the very first week. We wanted to show that we could try more cases than any other parish in the first month, and we showed that. I believe the citizens of this community needed to see that effort. I believe my lawyers, some of them young, some of them new, needed to see me in court, see how it was done. And so whether or not a clip of close to 100 jury trials is the best practice nationally or at a statewide level, I think it's what New Orleans needed to see in the middle of a crime surge. So we're going to continue to push that pace as much as we can, because people talk in the back. Defendants here. Council Vice President Morrell can tell you from his days of working as a lawyer over there. People on the docks, people in Orange, talk about what happens in court. And when they hear that every case that went to trial in a week resulted in a guilty as charged, it makes them reconsider the plea offer that was on the table the week before that. You can't try cases every day of the week because there are too many cases for 12 sections to get through the number of cases we have. But it sends a clear message to the public, and it sends a clear message to criminal defendants that Tulane and Broad is functioning.
I gotta say,
functioning well.
For those people who have tried to, like,
it's Herculean, because
throw this man
the
on
crime
the bus.
surge is not letting up.
Y'all looking silly right now.
The domestic violence cases are piling up, and we're dealing with the cases that were left in 2020 that cannot be tried, and those are first up. Most of the judges keep a running list of their oldest cases, which are usually murders or rapes. And so we try to communicate with the judges to make sure that we're trying those oldest cases so we don't run into any sort of speedy trial issues with persons who have been waiting for their day in court. And so most of the work that the judges have been doing, that my office has been dealing with, deal with the most serious and oldest cases. But there are far too many cases to try each one of them. But it's necessary for folks to see what the results could likely be if they go to trial.
So I want to turn to the DNA testing and coordination. We passed an ordinance to approve a DNA lab, get that rolling, and right now pending before the Civil Service is an amount of money to get a director in. How could use of DNA and having more access to DNA testing help speed up guilty pleas, trials, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, exponentially. The same way Claude Schlesinger would tell you, having more police officers on the force would allow you to respond faster for calls of service, and he's been ringing that alarm for years. Having good evidence will make people plead guilty to crimes they have committed at arraignment, right? Not having good evidence will cause people to stretch out cases for years and years. And so I think I heard Judge Pittman describe not having court security being something that could bring the criminal justice system to a screeching halt. We need to be very clear. Not testing the evidence that the NOPD and other law enforcement agencies have dutifully and properly collected in cases will bring justice to a screeching halt. And it's a morale killer. Detectives work very hard to go back to crime scenes to look for evidence to collect. They collect it. They send it up to LSP for testing. A year passes. The case is set for trial. And lo and behold, and that backlog is in the thousands. And we're waiting along with several other parishes for that testing to happen. One judge even said, we had a hearing, and the judge said, well, I want my evidence in my case next week. And the LSP official said, well, good luck, because every judge in the state wants their evidence processed and wants it there, just like every DA wants it processed. So there are very few defense lawyers that would allow a trial to go forward with DNA outstanding. But there are very few defense attorneys and defendants who would go to trial when we can show that their DNA was present at a crime scene and properly collected by the NOPD at a place that they said they were not, right? So it is critical that we get that $100,000 to LSP so that we can have 3 individuals dedicated to testing the backlog of evidence that NOPD have already shipped up to Crime Lab. And right now we're talking about murders and rapes. But that evidence is also important for car break-ins because you can leave that evidence on a car seat or broken glass. But LSP is not even going to test a car break-in before a serial rape case or a murder case. So getting that DNA, getting that $100,000 to LSP quickly, and this council passing that ordinance to stand up an accredited DNA lab and having it fully staffed and having the DNA equipment there, it's essential because even in the year or so it will take to stand that office up, we will need both. We will need that office, and we will still need those 3 dedicated people at LSP, because individuals who have hurt people in this town will plead guilty to their crimes when we can show them a document that shows that no one else could have done it but them. So it's critical.
I promise I only have a few more questions, Chair. I know you're looking at me. So on victim and witness cooperation, how can we help to keep these folks safe?
Well, there's one glaring thing that was brought up at the last presentation. The judges suspended access to South White Street for my DAs who are bringing in victims, witnesses, and survivors. And that's not just because some of them wear heels and they carry big old boxes full of evidence and statements upstairs. That's not the issue. That's the reason why that's concerning. The reason why that's concerning is the checkpoint at Tulane and Broad, utilized by the general public, is a place where defense attorneys, where criminal defendants on bond, where the family members, loved ones, gang-affiliated associates of defendants enter the building. Right. And so when we don't have a dedicated space like South White Street to bring witnesses forward who are already scared to come forward, and we don't have a place for that domestic violence survivor or that rape survivor, we don't have a dedicated space for them to not stand in line next to their offender, there's a high probability that they may not come to court. So it is really important that we have a place where we can separately get those survivors, witnesses, and victims into court. And to be clear, Louisiana Revised Statute 46/1844 requires that the court has a secure and separate waiting area for victims of crimes. My office, because the courthouse has not designated pursuant to Revised Statute 46/1844, because they have not designated a special place for victims, survivors, and witnesses within Tulane and Broad, we have handled that inside the DA's office. We have handled the security of bringing them across the street with an armed, post-certified investigator or dedicated NOPD officer through a separate entrance. But that was taken away. And I want to be very clear, that decision was made in a vacuum, and that decision was made prior to the sheriff alerting this council and the judges of capacity issues. That's a separate issue. And it's an issue that I'm very passionate about because this is a powder keg. And I'd rather be verbose today than too late next month when there's been a shooting on the courthouse steps because victims, survivors, and witnesses are in line outside. And there's no security outside of the courthouse. The security is inside of the courthouse. So there's no way for the one or two people behind that metal detector to get out there to de-escalate a situation. And I'm willing to cooperate in any way that I can to help facilitate this. But this is a must. This is a yesterday. This is a last week thing that needs to be solved. I am committed and would be willing to commit one of my post-certified investigators to man that entrance to check for credentials. I know that there's an unused metal detector within the
courthouse. Sounds like there's a particular entrance that the DA wants back open so that him and his staff can get in. And look, it sounds like little things, but it's all of the little things that add up, and it seems like it's a huge deal to him. So
someone who's willing to come forward and say that they were the victim of a rape or they saw someone shoot someone else, they need to know that they're going to be protected when they come to court, the same way they were protected before the court ended that access. So that's essential.
I want to turn to partnerships. Can you talked about getting guns off the street and prosecuting illegal arms. What are any partnerships that you have with the feds, the ATF, FBI?
So we meet on a regular basis with Project Safe Neighborhoods, working on the Project Safe Neighborhoods initiative. This is myself, Chief of Police Shaun Ferguson, Head of Eastern District DOJ, Dwayne Evans, Special Select of the FBI, Head of the ATF, and the DA. We're meeting regularly to talk about any and all cases that involve guns, violence, gang activity, interstate shootings, carjackings. This is what we talk about. And we're not just talking about it. We put special protocols in place so that we've all got dedicated people over at that Special Operations Bureau right by Walmart on Chapatulas, where my team and this team work on a regular basis to compare notes, to figure out who are those names that keep coming up in certain circles. So those partnerships are in place. I would love to be able to dedicate more ADAs to that work because it takes more bodies to deal with more cases. I know the chief would love to have more officers and detectives dedicated to that work. If there were multiple units, there'd be multiple cases solved. And so the partnerships are there. I think the resources necessary to expand the number of human beings involved in those partnerships. They're there.
Tell you what, boy, Jason, there's a long one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm specifically thinking about the incident that happened 2 weekends ago with the kids who were on social media with their AK-47s and just wilding out. So when I say knuckleheads, I really hope that someone's going after them because they're on social media and we can identify who they are.
That was a huge part of our discussion on, I think it was last Thursday when we met, or last Wednesday. We had the screenshots. We were sharing the screenshots. Councilman Morrell still has good investigative chops. He's been able to bird dog some of that, find some of those individuals. I've also asked that we expand that working group to include Hillard Moore, the DA in East Baton Rouge. The Sunday that incident occurred, the takeover, as it's called.
Ruh-roh looks like they about to go to PR to get you boys.
With Hillard Moore. The DA of East Baton Rouge alerted me that this had occurred in his jurisdiction and other jurisdictions. Many of these individuals were from that area, had planned these events in that area, so we're working together now. We're hoping to be able to bring charges against these individuals in multiple jurisdictions so that they're facing penalties that would run consecutive in all of those jurisdictions, working with the federal authorities as well, so that we can use social media to hopefully get in front of this because it was advertised. It was planned. And so if we can see that it's planned, if we can see that it's coming to us, hopefully we can put things in place before a single donut or a single gun is brandished on our streets.
Simple. I'm going to do something that lawyers should never do. I only have 2 more questions, but I will probably have 3. So when we talked in January, you talked about potentially embedding DAs into each NOPD district. What is the status of that?
We do not have the resources to do it now. I still think it's an excellent idea. We've come up with a bit of a hybrid or triage answer to that with the help of Federal Judge Morgan and Federal Consent Decree Monitor John Aroney, who I still meet with regularly. They are very excellent thought partners and making sure we're getting it right and delivering. One of the things we've added after our last meeting is we're meeting our screeners, our ADA, our screening chief, and our screeners are meeting with case officers and supervisors to deal with an issue spot report writing so that we are working with the NOPD as they're putting together their reports, so the reports are exactly what we want in front of a jury so that it can be successful. So as of right now, we cannot afford to put ADAs in each of the districts because that would mean taking them out of court, taking them away from screening cases faster, taking them out of juvenile. So we can't afford that now until we get more ADAs. If that comes in the mid-year budget proposal, we will do it immediately. But we are meeting with them regularly, and it's been really, really helpful with getting with creating better and stronger cases.
With the technology that you're requesting for 100K, would that help with the gap there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it really would allow for an officer to do their work that they're already doing, right? Upload that information into the cloud without spending another hour trying to burn a CD, right? Or put it on a zip drive or get to a computer so they can get us that information. as it stands right now, we've got.
So basically, what you're hearing is that one of the reasons why our justice system moves so slow is this idea that we don't want to adopt any kind of technology. Which, listen, I understand people have problems with surveillance, but like, I agree. Like the idea that we're like burning evidence on the CDs.
Use that time more wisely and just upload that information. We can pull it down if there's any restrictions necessary. The makers of the technology can set those up so that certain information is private for the police or private for the DA's office, but it's used in other places, but that would be a huge force multiplier.
Okay, and then finally, what is the status of the MAG unit?
We've consolidated that work into the division at SOD with VK. They are doing that work. They're doing that work well. ADA Kalinda, we've added ADA Catherine Messina. We've added a paralegal. We call them trials assistants. We've never had that before, but we've got somebody else doing the non-legal work with that team as well that helps with the grand jury indictments. So what the chief and I were able to do, I had asked, the chief had asked, we got together and we consolidated all of our needs into that one SOD unit, and it's delivered real results, as you can see from the grand jury indictments, and you can see from the trials. There was a trial about 3 weeks ago in which Alex Kalinda, along with ADA Catherine Messina and Ashton Brown, tried that case. This is a case involving 3 defendants who had taken the life of 2 parents when their kids were present. They were trying to cover up an earlier crime that involved multiple homicides, and the work of the unit manifested itself in that trial in which all those individuals were convicted. And that was a case that, frankly, it was on its last legs before we put the pieces in place to deliver on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I told Councilmember Harris directly, I'm not as good a student as her, so I'll have much fewer questions. First off, I know you touched on it briefly, but I know from both of our experience working at CDC, Criminal District Court, not the other one, it's always troubled me how DAs walk between the DA's office and Criminal District Court, especially considering the types of cases they have. Do you have general security concerns and specific concerns regarding the security of ADAs?
If we do not have that access I described before, and thank you for that question, I do. We live in a very different time and place than we did when you and I were starting off over at Tulane and Broad. There was a time when there weren't metal detectors at Tulane and Broad. We've seen storming of our nation's capital. We've seen lives lost. Far more prosecutors find themselves in harm's way because of people they're prosecuting than any other actor in the criminal legal system. Far more victims find themselves and witnesses find themselves in harm's way than any system actor. And our ADAs and victim witness advocates, those are the folks who are walking folks into court for trials and hearings. So when that access to South White Street was taken away, every single ADA, every single investigator, every single victim witness advocate in my office was apoplectic. They were apoplectic because it is dangerous enough just sharing the halls. We can't do anything about that. It is dangerous enough not having a dedicated place for them to wait other than a bench.
I don't know the backstory on this, and I need to get it.
But we have a detective. We have an investigator. We have detectives
there.
With
the DA's office
so
in this way,
without
you wonder
why. Entrance,
you wonder why things aren't getting done in this city because people are
60 people
out here playing games. I don't know if they're playing games. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But if this is a game playing situation,
ADAs, along with survivors, along with sometimes gang-affiliated friends, it's a very dangerous situation. I think it's a powder keg, and I think it needs to be addressed today.
Okay. With your manpower, I'm interested. I know you touched on it, but I think it would be a better visualization if you could kind of give us percentages. So how many current ADAs do you have dedicated to violent crime and laser focused on violent crime versus misdemeanor and non-violent offender complaints?
So in each section of court, we've got 12 sections of court. We've got a first chair that is dedicated to those violent cases in every section of court. We have a second chair that is also working on those cases in addition to the low-level nonviolent cases. And we have a team of 4 dedicated to working with the NOPD, ATF on serial violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, those cases that are growing out of the SOD division. In addition to that, we've got 2 ADAs that are solely dealing with the screening of homicide cases, manslaughters, murder cases. Those are separate and apart from the screening of cases that are associated with the VCATE unit. We also have a gun screener that we have embedded with the violent crime unit as well, because we believe it was necessary to have our gun screener tied to cases in which someone has actually caused harm, not just had a gun, because oftentimes, as you know, there's an arrest made when there's not a violent offense, but a gun is present, and that gun could have possibly been used in a violent offense, and so we want to make sure
yeah, I'm not quite
we're
sure
able
what
to connect
SOD
those
means.
dots,
Maybe someone else in the comments can answer that.
as it
Troy.
relates to potential offenders of other crimes. We do not, with the addition of the gun crime screener embedded in the VCATE unit, is not nearly enough to deal with the number of those types of cases that are coming through. I would ask, because the 12 I described to you, the first chairs, they're only focused on those cases once they've gotten to court. The violent crime unit is a virtual prosecuting unit that follows a case from investigation with special operations, screening, and takes it all the way up to trials. We need more people dedicated to that vertical piece in order to be as effective as I think we can be.
Well, I'm going to get back to that piece, but I mean, I guess I'm looking for what percentage of your resources do you think right now are dedicated towards violent crime versus nonviolent offenses?
Well, I tell you, if you look at screening, and if you look at screening, you look at the trials division, I'd say 70%.
70%. So 70% towards violent, 30% towards everything else, which I think probably reflects kind of where the public's at right now. But I'll get back to that in a second. But resource-wise, and this is a really important question because we've dealt with this throughout city government. If we gave you the funding to fill those positions, do you have people lined up to fill them?
We have had to turn down qualified applicants at time because of fiscal constraints. We've moved people around so that we have more ADAs and paralegals and investigators focusing on that 70% of cases. I count in the 30% things like diversion, as well as other intervention programs, because that allows us to pull those low-level nonviolent cases off the court's docket. That's important because the things that are in court are the most violent cases, right? So when we talk about what's set every day, years ago, I mean, you remember this, you'd have 60 to 70% of a court's docket handling a simple possession of a vial of residue in a crack pipe, or marijuana, or one piece of crack cocaine. That was 70% of the court's work years ago. We flipped that. The cases that are on the court's docket are the most serious cases.
Okay. I think it's very important because as you've probably followed, as we comb through the budget, we have several departments that have a tremendous amount of funded positions with no people and no applicants. And as we're trying to reallocate and reassess where we're going to send resources, we need to know that if we give additional resources to fill spots, you're confident you can fill them.
I'm confident, and I commit to this body and you, Mr. Vice President, that we will not leave a single player on the bench in this fight. We have so much work. Our ADAs are working weekends and working nights. In fact, when we got the call from the sheriff Sunday, it was our office that was calling victims, that was calling witnesses, that was calling survivors to let them know to not come to court and find themselves waiting in a queue to get in the building, but to either participate virtually or wait until we call them to come forward or come to our office. So we got everybody in the game here. We've got victim witness advocates who typically are really just making sure that our survivors and victims and witnesses have what they need to come to court. We've got them working on cold cases. We've got them working on the violent crime unit because oftentimes we're able to get real information from a survivor of domestic violence, because a person who has committed domestic violence against his domestic dating partner is also committed violence on the interstate by shooting at people and committing other crimes, but he's talked about it to his partner. And so we're using every resource available to hold people accountable. So we've got everybody in the fight, and we will.
So
we
not only does it look like the
anybody
DA's
on the
office is
bench in
underfunded
this,
and understaffed,
we're
but
ready
it
to
looks
hire.
like they're actually going above and beyond the
Very
Call of
few
Duty
questions.
to get the job
Virtual
done.
hearings,
So again,
I think even the judges acknowledged
some of these narratives
the days
against
of Orleans
Jason
Parish
Williams
being the
are seemingly
outlier on these
falling
virtual
apart.
hearings are pretty much coming to a very abrupt end. Are you confident that, I feel like I already know the answer to this question, are you confident you'll be ready and your team will be ready for those hearings when they're back live in person? Do you feel like the judges will be ready? Do you feel like security is going to be ready for when all those hearings shift all the way back from virtual all to in person?
I'll tell you what I told my team Sunday night and Monday morning. You have to be ready for it all. You have to be, and I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. I said specifically. You
Finally,
need to be
somebody
prepared
who's
to
willing
move
to take
virtually with all
accountability
hearings
and
that
just
can
get
go
the
forward.
work done.
You also need to be prepared to move forward in person with any case that a judge is ready to move in person on, because the judges are not a monolithic group. Some of the judges did not want to suspend jury trials as long as they were suspended, although the group suspended them. Some of the judges are willing to say, hey, I don't have a case that has a need for security today, so I will let any deputies that are available go to the sections that need them for trials. So it was apparent that there would be some sections of court that would be ready to move forward, and we needed to make sure that our ADAs never took their eye off the ball or foot off the gas for the cases that were set, the 7 cases that were set for trial and the multiple cases that were set for hearing. So we're ready to move forward, whether it's 100%, whether it's 60%, whether it's all virtual, whether it's all in person. We're ready to move forward. And I would suggest to this body, old habits die hard, that we need to really be proactive about the next emergency. There will be another hurricane. There will be another reason when courts are shut down. There will be potentially another reason. This is not the first shutdown the DA's office has had to suffer through. This is the 3rd time that we've been told we couldn't go in and try cases. And so we need to be strategic about when these things happen so that we can have a plan. If a new variant were to come up, I would submit to this body, as I submitted to the judges of Criminal District Court months ago. We don't have to just use a courthouse. We have an entire convention center that is completely empty because nobody's traveling during the shutdown, where we could space jurors out and continue to try cases and move things forward. We've got to be creative.
I love when people come with creative ideas to solve problems
we
that we don't have to go
throw our hands
all
up
the way
when crises come up
to the extreme.
We've got to work
Sometimes
together. And
there
I
are
know this
ways that we can
committee
do this thing
has
safely and keep things
good
going.
ideas
So a
and
lot
is
of
not
the
afraid to
backlog
weigh
of
in
trials. I mean, I
to help
talked
us
to the
come up
DA
with
about
more
this
or
idea
reach
with
out
the convention
center. Reach out to Walt. Reach out.
I don't see why it
to
wasn't
members
done.
of
I don't
hospitality
see
to
why it
allow us
wasn't
to use
done.
ballrooms. This is what they did. This is what Tony Clayton did in Point Capee. They use hotel rooms and convention centers to try cases, and we can do that same thing.
All right. This is more of an anecdotal question. You and I both know, it's like we talked about how the criminal element in this city pays attention to how law enforcement and how law enforcement partners respond to crime and our behavior.
Correct.
Let me ask you a question. How many cases have you prosecuted of aggravated battery by shooting?
Have I prosecuted myself?
Your office, aggravated battery by shooting.
Well, we take those very seriously. In fact, there have been instances in which I'll get a complete number.
Well, before you go there, let me ask you, because this is something that I've really, it's not just for you, it's the person after you. If a person fires a firearm into a crowd full of people, especially if that person's in a car, you and I both know that's attempted second-degree murder. There are several. The second-degree murder statute is very forgiving as far as, and very wide open. And as you know, when there was the shooting in Southeastern during that graduation ceremony, the individuals that performed that shooting, law enforcement declared and sought those people based upon attempted second-degree murder. NOPD policy has been to call every shooting that happens with an injury an aggravated battery by shooting. The difference, and I say this because we know knuckleheads pay attention, an aggravated battery by shooting is a maximum of 10 years with no minimum and a $5,000 fine. Attempted second-degree murder is not less than 10 years, up to 50 years, hard labor with no parole.
Why are you playing games?
It is an
NOPD?
erroneous message to send to people when you have mass shootings at graduations, at bars, at wherever, and the police put out bulletins saying, looking for these people for an aggravated battery by shooting.
Boom, boom, boom.
You and I both know that when you charge them, it's going to be attempted murder or attempted manslaughter.
Boom.
Because if you have a firearm into a crowd, any jury is going to say, at best, it's attempted manslaughter. And when we talk about the message you're sending to that element, they know the law, and their lawyers know the law.
There they go.
And just like when you send that message of we're going to prosecute each case, and it gets back to those guys that go, man, this is serious. They're prosecuting everything at max, and they're getting convictions. If we're not calling these shootings attempted murders, and we are allowing in the public discourse for them all to be aggravated batteries by shooting, that does permeate into that element. And they don't take it as seriously because we're not taking it as seriously. So I asked you that question because I bet when you dig, you're going to find you don't have many aggravated batteries by shootings because you have them as attempted murders.
Yeah, I mean, what you described is a philosophy we have used. It's analogous to what we do with carjackings. For whatever reason, the legislature, when they created the carjacking statute, made it far less serious and severe sentencing-wise than it did armed robbery, which is why we charge any carjacking that we can as an armed robbery, and the same thing does apply to an aggravated battery. The mentality of bringing a firearm to a graduation, the idea of bringing a firearm to any school setting, the idea of bringing a firearm to a festival or Bourbon Street is wrought with peril and problem. And the idea that someone thinks they can shoot in the general direction of a person they're mad at with not a care for any of the other human beings on the other business side of that gun really exacerbates how numb we have come and become as a community to violence. We can't tolerate it in any fashion, and you will see it reflected in the way that we charge these cases. And that also includes anyone found in possession of a firearm in
the presentation. So really, I just have one question for you, Mr. DA. When you came before us, I believe it was in February, in your presentation, obviously you had been talking about, and you've actively been working.
Adding more people to multiple units. and we can collaborate and coordinate to get to that point. But I'm very proud and appreciative of the unit that exists now that encompasses both of those ideas, because it has yielded real fruit. It has yielded real fruit in terms of arrest. It has yielded real fruits in terms of getting the evidence we need to present at grand juries, at the special grand jury. And it's in the past month, 2 months, it's yielded real fruit in terms of trying those cases and getting guilty verdicts. But I'll tell you, I don't think there's anybody in my agency or in the NOPD or another that would turn down investing in more units and more people to focus on the specialized crimes that we're seeing occur. Interstate shootings are still happening. That's a very unique, very problematic offense, and dangerous to every single one of us that lives in this city. And so, to the extent that we can specialize
I'm having some
the
issues
work
on
of
my end
certain
with the
units,
stream, but I'm gonna just keep it going for
I've
now.
seen that work very well in other municipalities, but it usually boils down to woman power, manpower, and how much money we assign to it.
So just so I'm clear, we don't have to worry about tracking down those CEAs anymore?
I think we're squared away now. If we collaborate more on building another one, it would require a new CEA.
Okay.
Thank you for following up on that, though.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Mr. DA, thank you for coming out today. I appreciate it, and those who are with you today. During your presentation in February and today, you've mentioned the word technology, resources, and force multipliers to assist the police in being able to help you to do a better job. On the agenda today, for example, is something that involves restoring to the police some of the technology that was taken from them in the past, and I understand some of the circumstances and reasons behind it. But now that you are the gatekeeper, if you will, the person who will see, the person at the end who can make a decision, who has the power to make a decision if there will be technology, if you will use the results of the technology,